Chapter 1062, Prison Cage. Chapter 1062, Prison Cage. Boom, boom, boom. At least a dozen giant aura figures surrounded him. Ling Han quickly ducked into the Black Tower, and then moved along with the direction of the impact. Coincidentally, he just happened to be floating in the direction of the altar. He saw a group of carts steering over from afar. Those carts were prison carts. Every prison cart was shockingly huge. Some were even over a dozen meters tall, and various types of powerful demonic beasts were caged within them. These demonic beasts were all roaring from the carts, and some had even released their divine sense with a roar, spewing out curses. Not only were there powerful demonic beasts, there were also ordinary animals. There were even humans, and they were all treated like animals, being transported towards the altar. Was this a living sacrifice? As the carts drove over, they naturally became attacked by the aura figures as well. However, when the humanoid aura figures rushed over, multiple divine patterns on the carriages lit up, interweaving into a brilliant light. Bang, 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 and the figures were all bounced back. This should be the work of a heavenly body tier elite, Ling Han thought. There were some humanoid aura figures that had practically reached the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier, yet they still collapsed with a single blow. The level of these divine patterns should be about heavenly body tier. He looked closely, and there was a paper talisman stuck on each cart. It was the paper talisman that was glowing and forming the divine patterns. The carts traveled openly, and the aura figures were completely incapable of stopping them. A thought flashed in Ling Han's head, and a bold idea formed in his mind. All of a sudden, he appeared from the Black Tower. Wang, demonic qi immediately enshrouded his body, completely concealing him. Now, no matter who saw him, there was no way they would be able to recognize him, and even if they met once more in the future, they could not possibly link him with his current appearance. Xiao, xiao, xiao. In a few steps, Ling Han had caught up with the prison carts and directly pounced over. On the horse cart, a cart driver coldly uttered, "You are courting death." He did not have the intention to make a move. The decree of a heavenly body tier was on this cart, so how could any mountain river tier cultivator hope to be able to come nearby? Although this mountain river tier cultivator was indeed a bit odd, his whole body exuding black qi and having an unknown evil feeling, with the decree of heavenly body tier here, what was all that worth? He would be directly turned into pieces by the power of the decree. HM? The cart driver was stunned. He obviously saw that man pounce over. So why had he suddenly disappeared? Could it be that he had been turned to dust, not leaving behind even the slightest bit of flesh or blood? He was a bit confused. However, the inauspicious air here was powerful. So if he had been turned into bits of flesh and blood, then combined with the inauspicious air, it would indeed be difficult to distinguish. Big Ironhead, did anything happen? Someone asked loudly from a carriage behind. I just saw a dark figure pounce on your carriage. Nothing. It was a mountain river tier cultivator, possibly someone that slipped away. He should have been turned into dust by His Majesty's decree. The cart driver that had been addressed as Big Ironhead replied. Haha, that thief wanted to open up the prison carts to release these prisoners and create chaos? He was really too naive. With the decree of His Majesty, whoever comes, it would be useless. The cart driver behind laughed loudly. Of course, Big Ironhead nodded and drove the cart forward once more, no longer thinking of the figure that he had glimpsed just now. Ling Han sat quietly. The instant that he pounced at the cart, he had entered into the Black Tower. It just happened to fall inside the cart. The Black Tower could not be invaded by anything, and naturally would not be stopped by the divine light of the decree. This cart contained over a dozen prisoners, and they were all demonic beasts of the mountain river tier. There were fierce tigers with 4 eyes, some with the head of a bull but the tail of a snake, and giant golden goats. But they were all forcibly compressed by a secret technique, so they were about the size of normal wild animals. Their cultivation had been restricted. Though they possessed powerful strength in their bodies, they were unable to channel that strength. All of them looked enraged and hopeless. By the time they had reached this cultivation level, demonic beasts were not that much different from humans in terms of intelligence. They were naturally aware that this was an altar, and they were the offerings. This enraged them and made them roar, but a while later, they stopped. They had lost hope. The carts slowly proceeded to the altar. Underneath, there was a tunnel, which was big enough to allow these carts to pass through easily. Its width was slightly shocking. The surrounding environment became dark. Though there were torches in the tunnel, they were not bright enough, which made their surroundings seem oppressive and eerie. The tunnel quickly reached its end, and a wide space appeared suddenly ahead. The inside of this altar was hollow. On the other three sides, there were various prison cells partitioned out. They turned and twisted, densely packed together, extending from the lowest floor all the way to the top. The majority of prison cells contained either humans or demonic beasts, with some prison cells left empty. The bottom of the altar had been dug out. The depth was unknown as it had been filled with bright red blood. Even in the Black Tower, Ling Han felt like he could smell that powerful stench of blood. Even if the bottom of this altar had not been dug very deep, the amount of blood needed merely to fill this slightly was immeasurable. No wonder there were so many corpses outside. This was really a massive slaughter. Within the blood pool, or rather, it could even be called a blood lake, there was light flickering vaguely, exuding a shocking coldness. Tong! The blood lake gushed, and a huge demonic beast was tossed down from above. Its head had been severed, and as its corpse fell into the blood lake, it created ripples. But very soon, someone would fish its corpse out and then toss it to one side. One after another, the prison cells were opened, and the humans and demonic beasts brought here by the carts were stuffed in. Then, the bodies were piled into the carts, and would then later be transported out of the altar. The bodies would then be delivered outside to be disposed of. Ling Han took advantage of the hurry and confusion to get off the cart. Then, he ducked back into the Black Tower as he waited for everyone to leave. Among the terrible screams, the slaughter was still continuing. One after another, demonic beasts and cultivators were thrown down from the top of the altar, dropping into the lake of blood with a splash. The newly arrived prisoners were all snarling in rage at that, knocking strongly on the iron bars of their prison. The seniors, though, were already numb and did not react at all. The carriages carried off their full load of corpses. Later, there would be a second and third batch of carriages arriving, carrying new sacrifices. At the same time, they would also be taking away the bodies of those that had just been sacrificed. Aside from the repeated screaming, as well as the splashes, this was actually quite a quiet place. There would be a cultivator patrolling every floor, but because this altar was really too big, one round of patrolling would take a very long time. Thoughts streaked quickly through Ling Han's head. When the patrolling cultivator of this floor passed by, he suddenly appeared out of the Black Tower and grabbed at that man. The man was astonished. Who would have thought that someone would appear out of nowhere and attack him? He quickly clenched a fist and punched out behind him. In his hurry, he only managed to channel less than 30% of his full power. Wang, Ling Han used the 7-kill subduing soul technique. The man did not even manage to release a grunt before he was directly knocked unconscious. At this time, Ling Han's hand had just gripped onto the man's neck. With a thought, he drew him into the Black Tower. He pressed down on the other man, and with a wave of origin power, the person released an exclamation of shock and suddenly regained consciousness. "How dare you?" The man immediately rebuked. He then raised his voice and called loudly, "There's an enemy." His screams suddenly stopped. He suddenly realized that he was no longer within the altar. He couldn't help but be shocked. What was this place? How long had he been unconscious? "My master wants to ask you a few questions. You had best cooperate obediently, or I shall devour you." The Azura Demon Emperor appeared, baring his mouth, his extremely sharp fangs rubbing against that man's face. It had to be admitted the Azura Demon Emperor was really quite suited to this kind of work. Chapter 1063, A Frightening Conspiracy. Chapter 1063, A Frightening Conspiracy. You, The man was scared witless. What kind of dog was this? Having a sinister, malevolent expression. It was obviously an engineered puppet, yet it could actually speak human language. Moreover, it was completely acting like a vile character, which was something he could not accept. You? What you? The Azura Demon Emperor used Ling Han's authority in this place as an intimidation tactic, one paw clapping onto the man's head. I am the glorious little Azura, and this is my master, an even more glorious being. Now, master is asking you questions here, and answer whatever you know the answer to. Otherwise, I will first rip off your 4 limbs, then devour your 5th one. The man suddenly felt a chill between his legs, and involuntarily clamped his legs together. He only felt that this huge dog was utterly perverted and cruel, actually wanting to eat his CK. However, with such a scare, the man became well-behaved. He had somehow been captured, and had appeared in such a strange place, so being now threatened by the Azura Demon Emperor, his willpower had long since crumbled. Why have you all built this altar? Ling Han asked directly. This, the man stammered. Ah? He instantly released a terrible shout as one of his arms had been ripped off by the Azura Demon Emperor. The Azura Demon Emperor was no nice guy. In the first place, he was from the netherworld, and in his eyes, all the living beings of the immortal realm were equivalent to ants, which he did not take to heart at all. Thus, putting aside the fact that he had just torn off one arm, even if it was tearing apart the man's neck, he did not mind at all. When the man saw that the Azura Demon Emperor's wolf eyes had turned to focus on his other arm, he was almost scared witless and quickly answered, "It is to use blood sacrifices to dispel the violent air of a treasure underneath, or there would be no way to collect it." What? Ling Han was slightly surprised and asked, "The operation this time round was ordered by your emperor?" "Yes, it is by order of his Imperial Majesty." Since the man's mouth had loosened, he no longer had the intention to resist thereafter, and replied truthfully, "This involves a decree in the army, which clearly means that your emperor places great importance on this treasure, yet he did not come personally to collect it himself, which means that even your emperor has no way to collect it, and has to use blood sacrifices to dispel its violent air, and only then will he be able to collect it." Ling Han deduced. Pa. The Azura Demon Emperor immediately clapped his wolf paws together in applause and praised, "Master is wise, Master is intelligent, Master is this little Azura's bright sun that has lit up a path of light in front of me." Ah! The captive once again let out a loud scream. He looked innocently at the Azura Demon Emperor. "Why had you bitten me all of a sudden? My master has made such a brilliant, wise deduction, and you actually dared not applaud. Are you planning on rebelling?" The Azura Demon Emperor glared out of its wolf eyes, looking monstrous. The captive couldn't help but be sullen. If he currently had supreme power, the first being he would suppress would definitely not be Ling Han, but rather this damn dog. It was too devious. "What treasure is it?" Ling Han asked. "I don't know." The captive shook his head. "Ah!" he yelled. His other arm had been suddenly ripped off by the Azura Demon Emperor. "I really don't know," he quickly called out, not wanting both his legs to be ripped off too. The Azura Demon Emperor turned to Ling Han and said, "Master, looks like he really doesn't know." The captive was incredibly aggrieved. "You really turn to violence too easily at the slightest disagreement, don't you?" Thankfully, after one had entered a mortal level, it was a piece of cake to regrow any severed limbs, and it only required a little time. However, if one was wounded by an elite, and the latter's martial intent was still left behind in the wound, the limb could not possibly be regrown without expelling the foreign martial intent. Ling Han pondered, a hand on his chin. The Azura Demon Emperor dared not disturb him, and quickly signaled to the captive to go to one side. He was going to start a second round of interrogation to find out everything the latter knew so he could win Ling Han's favor. The Eternity Sky Emperor used the invasion of the Golden Lion Nation as a cover, while his purpose was the treasure buried under that place. Furthermore, he had gone through so much trouble, which was proof that the significance of this treasure had to be extraordinary. All the way here, he had seen that the land within 1,000 miles of this place had been dyed crimson, all living beings completely eliminated. He surmised that they had to have been captured to become sacrifices. Not only humans and animals, even living beings such as plants and trees were unable to escape this calamity. Even if ordinary people were mere ants in the eyes of immortals, such actions would still be considered deranged. No wonder the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire wanted to seal off the furious river. Otherwise, should he allow this matter to leak out, it would definitely incite the terrible fury of the chaotic Stars Majestic Empire. However, the truth always came out. This matter would be known to the world sooner or later. Then, Ling Han came to two possible truths. Firstly, the treasure here was precious enough to make the Eternity Sky Emperor willing to bear such infamy, and even take the risk of starting a war with the other two majestic empires just to obtain it. Secondly, this treasure was a supreme god tool. As long as he could obtain it, the Eternity Sky Emperor's battle prowess would be enough to crush all life. Even if the truth came out then, so what? Only he would be able to suppress others, and who would be able to go against him? In this world, it was ultimately the strong who made the decisions. When one's strength was enough to crush all opposition, what need would he need to consider the opinions of others? Would others even dare to disagree? This is far from good. This art of blood sacrifice is practically demented and would incite public fury. Yet the Eternity Sky Emperor still did it, which means that what he conspires is far larger than the consequences of being subjected to the combined assault of the two majestic empires after everything is over. I must wreck it. Ling Han clapped his hands once and made his decision. The best method was to first snatch the treasure in this place, so the Eternity Sky Emperor's efforts would be wasted. But even the Eternity Sky Emperor had to use blood sacrifice to dispel the violent air of this treasure before he could even think about collecting it. Then, what would qualify Ling Han to obtain it first? The violent air that had merely seeped out could take human form and attack the spirit. Then, how terrifying would the violent air exuded by the treasure itself be? Was it something the current Ling Han could withstand? If I had the absolute beginning stone, I could still make an attempt. Ling Han couldn't help but bemoan his misfortune internally. He felt an urge to kidnap Empress Luanxing and give her a good spanking. As this thought flashed through his mind, he grimaced involuntarily. Oh no, unknowingly, the figure of this Empress had already been planted in his heart and kept creeping out without his will. She was practically a siren and was furthermore the especially powerful kind. If I can't collect the treasure beforehand, then I will create a large commotion and release all the prisoners here to destroy the rhythm of the blood sacrifices. Then, I will flee immediately and bring the news back to the imperial capital to let Empress Luanxing come personally to resolve this issue. Empress against Emperor, a battle on this level is not something that I can get involved in. His present destiny was already linked with the chaotic Stars Majestic Empire. If the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire really became invincible, then the joint peace planet would face a large reshuffling of the power balance, which also meant that authority would be completely concentrated on one side, and there would be no longer any precarious balance of power among the three majestic empires. A genius like him would then be in danger. What a dictator was most unwilling to see was the possibility that someone could challenge his dictatorship. Moreover, he still had the great Ling Empire on his shoulders, and he could not allow it to fall into the hands of another. And that is decided. Ling Han flashed out of the Black Tower. There was only one person patrolling this floor. Hence, even though he had vanished, this fact shouldn't be noticed until the next shift. He appeared in front of a prison cell and drew out the divine sword. With a few slashes, the iron door was sliced open. Then, he broke out into a grin and asked the prisoners inside, "Do all of you wish to go out?" The fifth limb usually refers to men's pen. S, only applicable to the male population. Chapter 1064, Releasing the Prisoners. Chapter 1064, Releasing the Prisoners. There was a total of 7 demonic beasts in the prison cell, and they were all staring at Ling Han with dumbfounded expressions, absolute disbelief on their faces. A human actually came here to rescue them. What a joke. Of course they wanted to flee from this place. Human, as long as you can rescue me from here, this old bear will owe you a huge debt. A black bear that was only a meter tall promised. His eyes, however, were purple. It was a demonic beast in the high extreme of the mountain river tier, and had long since awakened his intelligence. Now, though, his cultivation level had been suppressed, and his body had been forcibly shrunk to this size, which made him both furious and embarrassed. Feeling this was a great humiliation to him. Purple-Eyed Bear had a sliver of bloodline from the ancient divine beast, Overlord Heaven Bear, and he had been actually reduced to this state. This caused him such indignance he wanted to die. Ling Han said, I can remove the restrictions on all of you. However, do you think you will be able to flee from this slaughterhouse with just the number here? What ideas do you have? A donkey asked. He was completely golden in color and looked even more brilliant than a horse. Those that were qualified to be imprisoned here were all living beings in the immortal level. For ordinary beings, they were directly killed and then sacrificed. Their vitality was too weak, so there was no need for any ceremony. However, from the mountain river tier onwards, living beings possessed incredibly long lifespans, and the effects of sacrificing such creatures were awesome, so they could not be killed rashly. Ling Han bared a grin and said, I have cultivated a secret technique and can come and go as I like in this place. Thus, this is what I have planned. I will release all the prisoners here, and then you will all move together. Then, no matter what, a portion would ultimately be able to flee successfully. The 7 demonic beasts looked at one another and finally nodded in agreement. If it was just the few of them charging out, that was absolutely insufficient to even cause a scratch. However, if all the prisoners in the altar rebelled at the same time, then, just as Ling Han had said, though a great many would still be killed, there would ultimately be a portion that could be lucky enough to escape. We'll do it, the 7 demonic beasts exclaimed at the same time. Ling Han knocked out all 7 of the demonic beasts in an instant. Currently, the cultivation of all these demonic beasts was being restricted, so it was much too easy to accomplish this. Then, he drew them inside the Black Tower. Now that they were inside the Black Tower, it was naturally a piece of cake for Ling Han to remove the restrictions on them. He released the 7 demonic beasts once more and woke them up. This stunned all 7 of the demonic beasts. How had they recovered their cultivation level after suddenly falling unconscious? However, now they had regained their full abilities, so their confidence increased greatly. Yet, they did not make any rash moves and silently waited for the signal to move. If they were discovered at this time by the guards, their plan to escape the prison would definitely come to nothing. They made an agreement that the moment the rebellion began, the others would immediately move. Because it was highly possible that the guards would discover something was off here ahead of time, they would stake their all to move at that time, no matter how many were actually released at that point. Ling Han continued to circle around prison cells one after another, speaking the same lines. The prisoners in this place were initially merely waiting for death. However, now that they obtained a sliver of hope, they were naturally incredibly grateful towards Ling Han, and were also willing to cooperate with him to strive for that 1-minute sliver of survival for themselves. The operation progressed unexpectedly smoothly. Although Ling Han had liberated those in a great number of prison cells, there was still not the slightest bit of unusual movement in their surroundings. He did not worry that he would expose the secret of the Black Tower because he had used demonic chi to hide his aura all this while. If he reappeared using his original appearance, it was guaranteed that no demonic beast or human would be able to recognize him. A non-existent person possessing a spatial god tool, what relation would there be to him? 1 floor, 2 floors, 3 floors. Ling Han continued to head upwards, suppressing the guards all the while, and drawing them into the Black Tower. These guards were all in the mountain river tier, either in low or medium extreme. Naturally, they were no match for Ling Han. They were dealt with by just the 7-kill subduing soul technique, and not the slightest ripple was caused. Do you all wish to live? He had already liberated 1/3 of the prison cells, and when he entered a new cell, he spoke the same words. In this prison cell, there was a total of 4 people, as well as a small dog. It was in the shattering void tier, and who knew how it had managed to last until now. The 4 hurriedly nodded, and when Ling Han informed them of his plan, they gladly agreed. Ling Han knocked the 4 people and 1 dog unconscious before drawing them into the Black Tower. Using the same trick, he removed the restrictions on their cultivation level. He was just about to leave when he saw that the small dog actually bit onto his pants leg. And he looked at the dog. "I want to follow you," the dog said. It was not unusual for a demonic beast in the shattering void tier to be capable of human speech. However, most demonic beasts would have to reach the mountain river tier to be able to take human form, and that was not a definite eventuality either. Some could only be able to take human form even later, at the Sun Moon tier, Heavenly Body tier, or even Eternal River tier. "Why?" Ling Han questioned. "I can help you," the small dog said. All of a sudden, he disappeared. "What?" Ling Han stretched out his divine sense and actually did not manage to sense the existence of this dog. However, it was only for a short while, and the dog reappeared. It was still in its original spot. The only difference was that it was no longer biting onto his pants leg. "You can go invisible?" Ling Han was curious. This turned out to be a different method from the Black Tower, but led to the same result. "Only for a while, or I would not have been captured in the first place," the little dog said. "Are you sure you won't drag me down?" Ling Han asked once more. He was quite interested in this secret technique of the small dog, because once he himself had hidden into the Black Tower, he was unable to move. However, this small dog was still capable of movement even when invisible. "I won't," the small dog declared proudly. True, it was such a small dog, so who would really pay any attention to it? "All right," Ling Han agreed with a nod. A considerable number of people here was going to become cannon fodder, and there really would only be a portion that could manage to escape. Hence, if he did not want this small dog to die, it was best to bring the latter along with him personally. He was not afraid that the latter would know that he possessed a spatial god tool, as he was currently a person that did not exist. Man and dog progressed and continued to damage the prison cells, releasing the prisoners. Still, it had to be said that this dog was really quite capable. His teeth were very sharp and could easily bite through even the iron bars, which he swallowed down. If he had such a dog like this, it should be much more dependable than the Azura Demon Emperor. He thought thusly. Slightly less than half a day later, they had already released 2/3 of the prisoners. But just at this moment, they heard the sounds of moving carts. "Not good," Ling Han exclaimed softly. He had not thought that there would be another batch of carts delivering new prisoners coming so soon. Then, the situation happening below would definitely be exposed. True enough, in just a while, the sounds of battle were heard. Then, there were exclamations of shock and alarm bells ringing loudly. This alerted all the prison cells. Bang, bang, bang. A large number of prisoners charged out and began to fight for their lives. "We must rush too." Ling Han did not take advantage of the chaos to charge out. Instead, he rushed to release more prisoners. The small dog nodded. After watching for so long, he naturally knew that Ling Han had a spatial god tool on him. Furthermore, it was extremely awesome. Just going in and coming back out again would be able to remove the restrictions on them. Thus, he was not anxious at all. Later, he only needed to duck inside the spatial god tool with Ling Han, and even if the sky collapsed on their heads, there was no need to fear. Chapter 1065, 9 Flames Heavenly King. Chapter 1065, 9 Flames Heavenly King. The whole altar was embroiled in chaos. One after another, powerful demonic beasts charged out. One after another, cultivators showed their divine might. They had been imprisoned, about to be sacrificed, but now they could see a hope for survival. Worst came to worst. Even if they did not manage to make it out alive, they would bring down as many enemies with them as they could. At least, they could not allow themselves to die in such a powerless manner. Hence, these prisoners became like a fierce tiger that had just been released from its cage, baring its sharp fangs and completely unleashing its violent and murderous nature. "Brat, it's you." A guard finally caught Ling Han and the small dog destroying the prison cells red-handed and shouted in a towering rage. They were foiling the plans of His Imperial Majesty, and he would be held responsible for this failure. "Die!" He charged over and delivered a palm strike. It was like a mountain was bearing down. The hit had not yet landed, but Ling Han already felt like he was about to be flattened by that terrifying weight. The Sun Moon Tear. He could not take him head-on, he thought. Grabbing the small dog, he ducked into the black tower in a flash. Bang! The palm strike hit, yet did not manage to land on anything. "What?" the guard exclaimed in spite of himself. He was the chief of this place, and could be called the prison warden. He was responsible for all the sacrifices, yet the main culprit actually disappeared into thin air. How was he going to explain this to the Eternity Sky Emperor later on? This was a task that His Imperial Majesty had personally commanded him to do. When he thought of this, he shuddered involuntarily, breaking out in a cold sweat. Even if he was in the medium extreme of the Sun Moon tier, so what? In front of an ultimate elite of the heavenly body tier, he was a mere ant. What more when the Eternity Sky Emperor was a supreme elite at the consummate level of the heavenly body tier? One glare was enough to kill him a few hundred times over. In the Black Tower, the Azura Demon Emperor stared at the small dog, a very unfriendly expression on his face. This was too despicable. It was actually a dog as well. Wasn't it planning to snatch business from him? The small dog, meanwhile, acted very tsundere and ignored the Azura Demon Emperor completely. It merely looked around the environment in the Black Tower curiously, a clearly stunned expression on his face. Whoever entered into the Black Tower would be astounded at first. The Azura Demon Emperor could not help but ask, "Master, is this dumb dog your new pet?" "No." Ling Han shook his head. "He is just temporarily staying here for a while, and will soon leave." Only now did the Azura Demon Emperor feel relieved, and was no longer worried that someone else would take over his job. They waited in the Black Tower, but that guard did not leave all this while, seemingly sure that Ling Han had used some kind of means to hide in the darkness. He thought he just hadn't managed to find him yet. A major rebellion was taking place inside the altar. The prisoners that Ling Han had released numbered in the thousands, and were practically all in the Mountain River tier. Combined together, they were a very powerful force. Who would have thought that these prisoners who had had their cultivation restricted could still somehow stage a rebellion? The defenses here were completely insufficient. Suddenly, their defenses were broken through, and they proceeded forcefully. Wong. But just at this moment, a frightening aura rolled out in waves. Everyone was pressed against the ground by this aura. Even if Ling Han was inside the Black Tower, he still felt a lingering fear in his heart. An elite had come. A while later, a tall man walked out from the tunnel. A black cloak was wrapped around him, and it fluttered slightly even without any breeze. There were also 9 flames jumping around behind him, and they formed a circle behind his back. Each flame was filled with intimidating power. Even a Sun-Moon tier cultivator would be filled with endless fear upon a single look. The moment they were touched just in the slightest by these flames, they would instantly be incinerated and turned to ashes. This was an elite in the heavenly body tier. Indeed, this place was much too important. There was actually an elite in the heavenly body tier standing guard in the vicinity. The moment he had discovered a rebellion occurring in the altar, he rushed over to suppress it. In the face of such an elite, even if there was more than 10,000 Mountain River tier cultivators, what would be the use? A single look and a flare of his aura would completely suppress them. The gap between the two was too large to be described with mere words. Respects to the king. The few remaining guards knelt and reverently paid their respects. King. A thought flashed in Ling Han's head. There were not many kings in the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, but rather only one, and he was the actual brother to the Eternity Sky Emperor. He was known by the name Nine Flames Heavenly King, and it was rumored that his cultivation level had reached the high extreme of the heavenly body tier. The Nine Flames Heavenly King really did his name justice. There were 9 divine flames flickering behind him. This was his strongest killing move. Hiss! Even the brother to the Eternity Sky Emperor was standing guard here, which was a proof of the great importance the Eternity Sky Emperor attached to this place. With a casual wave of the 9 flames' Heavenly King's hand, cultivators and demonic beasts alike were tossed into the air. Then, they were blasted to death. Blood rained, and their vitality and life energy were all absorbed by the altar, feeding that so-called treasure underground, using their lives to dispel its air of violence. He was too powerful, and there was absolutely no one that could resist a single wave of his hand. A large amount of life energy and vitality flooded into the altar. If one was to cultivate here, it would be considered a haven. However, if anyone did something like that, they would definitely become the public enemy of the entire immortal realm. This was too deranged. Hence, forces like the Heaven's Sword Palace and the 5 sects would only secretly use the lower realm as an alchemist's furnace. Every 10 millennia, they would refine it once, obtaining a few realm pills. It was an extremely nutritious item, and was effective even for the Genesis tier, though the effects might be limited. Under the suppressive aura of the heavenly body tier, the living creatures in this place were incapable of even releasing a yell before they were killed one after another, and then sacrificed. His Imperial Majesty's plans must not be disrupted by anyone, the 9 Flames' Heavenly King uttered lowly. Though his voice was not loud, it echoed into each and every corner, so everyone could hear it loud and clear. "Yes, my lord," the guards replied respectfully once more. "Now tell me, why have the prisoners here fled?" the 9 Flames' Heavenly King asked coldly. These people had all had their cultivation sealed. They were all merely in the Mountain River tier, so with their own abilities, they could not possibly remove their restrictions by themselves even if they spent their entire lives trying to. This, the guards all hummed quietly. They couldn't really explain why either. "Are you all trash?" The 9 Flames' Heavenly King flew into a towering rage. Such a rebellion had already taken place. Yet these people actually didn't even know what was going on. My lord, I have deduced one possibility." A guard ran over. It was the prison warden. "Speak." Yes. The prison warden quickly recounted his previous encounter with Ling. The 9 Flames' Heavenly King casually grabbed a prisoner and struck him dead. Then, he read the prisoner's soul. Because the event had only happened just a while ago, and he only needed to find out the cause, he soon found out the scene of Ling setting the prisoners free. He tossed the prisoner into the blood lake, then grabbed another prisoner and read his soul as well. 1, 2, 3, and the memories he glimpsed were all the same. Who is this man? The 9 Flames' Heavenly King was shocked. From the memories of these people, he knew that the man that had set the prisoners free was only in the medium extreme of the Mountain River tier. How could he have possibly been able to release the restrictions on the others? Furthermore, there was a hole in their memory at the most crucial point. When their memories reappeared, their cultivation level had recovered suddenly. Strange, extremely strange. Suddenly disappeared? Could it be a spatial god tool? An expression of shock showed on his face. Others could not possibly think of that immediately, but elites of the heavenly body tier were very knowledgeable, and that was naturally not something ordinary people could match. Chapter 1066, 9 Demon Sword. Chapter 1066, 9 Demon Sword. That's not right. The 9 Flames' Heavenly King immediately shook his head. Even if it was a spatial god tool, it could not possibly disappear completely. A spatial god tool would still have form. What kind of secret technique could this be? Who exactly is this man? He mumbled. The 9 Demon Sword is extremely important, and absolutely no slip-ups are allowed. Moreover, things have already progressed to this point, and the day of collecting the treasure is close at hand. We must definitely not allow anyone to ruin things. Could it be that there has been an information leak that has attracted the attention of other elites? But with how strong our empire is, aside from the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire and the J-Drop Majestic Empire, who else would be qualified to covet what belongs to us? If it was the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire, they should have sent their huge armies by now, and they would not have possibly mobilized just a mere mountain river tier cultivator. Strange. I can't figure it out. However, the blood sacrifices is almost concluded. Tomorrow, Imperial Brother will arrive and personally collect the 9 Demon Sword. As long as we can last through this one day, with the 9 Demons Sword in hand, whom do we need to fear? He no longer pondered whilst mumbling to himself. He swept a glance over the gathered crowd and commanded, "Continue the blood sacrifices. There is to be no further slip-ups." "Yes, my lord." With the 9 Flames Heavenly King standing guard here, the blood sacrifices continued. By now, who else would be able to escape? Fuck. Ling Han was also rendered speechless. If there were merely elites of the Sun-Moon tier here, he could still think of a way to escape, but if he actually exited the Black Tower rashly with a supreme elite who was in the Heavenly Body tier, or even High Extreme, standing guard here who, furthermore, had obviously become suspicious would definitely be subdued at the first opportunity. One definitely could not doubt the abilities of an elite of the Heavenly Body tier. Let's give it a try. Ling Han tossed out one of the bodies of the guards. Shua, the 9 Flames Heavenly King, immediately appeared, his eyes fixed on the dead body as if flowers would be blooming from it any time soon. True enough, this guy's divine sense had enveloped the whole altar. The moment there was anything the slightest bit off, he would immediately react. Hee hee, little guy. Until when do you plan to hide? The 9 Flames Heavenly King laughed. I don't know what secret technique you've used to hide your existence, but you are merely in the mountain river tier, so how could you possibly hide yourself completely in front of me? He paused for a moment, and then continued, I'll give you a chance. Appear on your own, and I can spare your life. There might even be a chance for me to take you in as my battle servant. For elites like him, taking others in as battle servants was definitely not a humiliation, but rather a supreme honor. Ordinarily, only elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier would be thus qualified. Furthermore, they would have to be incredibly talented and qualified to attempt breaking through to the Heavenly Body tier. Ling Han was naturally not going to acknowledge him with an answer. A sliver of rage appeared in the 9 Flames Heavenly King's expression, and he coldly exclaimed, Since you will only submit to pressure after refusing a polite request, I shall do as you wish. Boom! The 9 flames behind him suddenly became denser and formed a divine flame, causing the surrounding area to start burning. The stone slabs very quickly were heated burning red and were beginning to melt. However, no one appeared. The 9 Flames Heavenly King couldn't help but be stunned. It had to be known that from the moment sound was heard until the moment he appeared, there was not even time for 1/100th of a heartbeat. He was sure that it was definitely impossible that the man had fled. He had to have used some kind of secret technique to hide himself nearby. But under the burning fire of his 9 flames, no one actually appeared. This was inconceivable. Even if the man was in the Heavenly Body tier, under the burning of his 9 flames, he would still have to channel his origin power to fully resist them. Otherwise, that would definitely be seeking death. But, as long as he defended himself, there would definitely be a vibration of origin power, and he would find out immediately. Had he seen a ghost or something? The corpse had definitely been thrown out of a spatial spirit tool. Hold on, he searched closely. Yet, no matter what, he did not find anything that looked like a spatial god tool. Although he had never seen this kind of ultimate treasure, he thought that it was more or less like a spatial spirit tool, and took the form of a ring, necklace, jade bottle, or something of the like. But here, there was not even a single pebble. The 9 Flames Heavenly King felt like he was about to go mad. In his whole life, he had fought both minor skirmishes and huge wars, and had also entered various dangerous ancient sites. All his abilities were completely earned through harsh training and experience, but now, this situation caused him to be completely at a loss. Humph, but at least I have proved one point. This man's abilities are indeed low, and he had not just disguised himself as Mountain River tier. This is why he dares not exchange blows with me, and does not even dare to show his face. He, too, knows that the moment he appeared, I would easily subdue him. Then, no matter what, when Imperial Brother comes tomorrow and collects the 9-demon sword, even if we announce the secret of this place to the whole world, what of it? We are destined to be invincible. He seemed to intentionally let Ling Han hear his words. These words he spoke to himself were not spoken lowly, and he had not used his origin power to purposely suppress his voice. Otherwise, those with low abilities obviously could hear the sound, yet would not be able to distinguish a single word. The 9-demon sword? Ling Han was stunned. Was this the treasure they were conspiring to gain? He asked the Azura Demon Emperor, and the Azura Demon Emperor naturally could only shake his head in response. He was not one of this realm in the first place. On the other hand, when he told this to the small dog, he began to bark loudly in reply, appearing to be very excited. You know of it? Ling Han was slightly surprised. He had not imagined that even a dog would know. I know. The small dog looked like it was incredibly astonished. Then why don't you quickly tell us? The Azura Demon Emperor showed a malevolent expression. He really hated this dog too much. That he was actually of the same family as this dog caused him to feel odd when he was trying to act cute and gain Ling Han's favor. The small dog quickly fled behind Ling Han and used its small paw to point at the Azura Demon Emperor, saying, "Big brother, he's acting fierce towards me." The Azura Demon Emperor was so infuriated he yelled, "I address Ling Han master, yet you call him big brother. Isn't this taking advantage of me?" Ling Han smiled. Why were there so many undependable people by his side? He sat cross-legged and said, "Don't keep us in suspense any longer. Tell us about the 9-demon sword." All right. The small dog dared not go against Ling Han. After sorting out his emotions, he said, according to an ancient legend, in the ancient era of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, possibly a considerable number of billions of years ago, there had once appeared a supreme elite. He forged himself a divine sword, and that was the 9-demon sword. It is said that this elite from the Chang clan wielding the 9-demon sword swept through the whole world and was known to be invincible. However, an elite from outside our planet arrived at this place later, and a huge war erupted between the elite from the Chang clan and the former. As a result, the elite from the Chang clan should have lost, and there was no sign of the 9-demon sword from that moment on. It is said that this 9-demon sword is a god tool on the level of the Eternal River tier. Pooh! The Azura Demon Emperor suddenly choked. To him, the Sun-Moon tier was already in existence far above him, while the Heavenly Body tier was invincible. Now that a god tool on the level of the Eternal River tier had appeared, how could it not astound him? Yet Ling Han was more curious about the origins of this small dog, and said, "You know quite a lot." Hee. Though my clan is not all that powerful, we love to collect information about the huge matters through the generations. What more when it is something as huge as this, the small dog said. Unfortunately, I am still too young, so the information I have access to is quite limited. TSK, he was still a knowledgeable dog. Ling Han guessed, the Chang clan should have lost the 9-demon sword. However, after countless years of searching, they finally discovered the location of the 9-demon sword. But because the 9-demon sword is on the level of the Eternal River tier, and is a level 13 god tool at least, they were unable to recover it immediately. They have to use the method of blood sacrifice to wear away at the air of violence on it first. As in Canine, reminder that he is in a wolf puppet now. Chapter 1067. The Eternity Sky Emperor arrives. Chapter 1067. The Eternity Sky Emperor arrives. This time, the whole truth was out. Everything was now linked, and there was a perfect explanation. But the problem was still very serious because Ling Han had not managed to stop the progress of the blood sacrifice, and the Chang clan was still going on as they had planned. Tomorrow, the Eternity Sky Emperor would arrive personally and collect the 9-demon sword. This was a level 13 god tool, at least. If it actually burst out its might, killing a Heavenly Body tier elite would be child's play. The Eternity Sky Majestic Empire would take over the entire Joint Peace Planet, and no one would be able to stand against them. No wonder they were so deranged and performed such a large-scale blood sacrifice. It was because once they obtained the Nine Demons' sword, they would become invincible. By then, what need would they have to consider the critique of others? Ling Han was slightly anxious, but he did not have any idea what to do at all. Now that the Nine Flames Heavenly King was standing guard here, if he went out, that would be a path straight to death. There was absolutely no second possibility. My only hope is Empress Luanxing as well as the Absolute Beginning Stone. It can absorb all attacks and can stand against even a divine sword on the level of the Eternal River tier. However, the Absolute Beginning Stone is so small, so there is a limit to the vital points that it can shield. She would still be at a massive disadvantage. What to do now? Ling Han scrambled his brains, but in the face of absolute power, any kind of plan would appear to pale in comparison, and so he was helpless. The Nine Flames Heavenly King only needed to send out a palm strike, and everything would be over. Time passed rapidly, and the blood sacrifices were still continuing. Copious amounts of life energy and vitality were absorbed by the altar, wearing away at the air of violence from the Nine Demons' sword. By the second day, it could be clearly felt that this altar was filled with an air of violence. This was not a bad thing. On the other hand, this was a sign that the blood sacrifice was about to succeed. That was because the air of violence from within the Nine Demons' sword had been forced out, and what would come next was that it would flourish the most before rapidly declining. By this time, the Nine Demons' sword was already exhibiting its frightening might. One after another, swords light flew out of the blood lake, easily destroying the prison cells inside the altar. As the sword light slashed past, blood and flesh flew in all directions. The might of this sword's light had already reached the level of the heavenly body tier. Putting aside those prisoners that had had their cultivation restricted, even those guards were no match for it. If they were actually hit, it meant definite death. They would be directly turned into pieces, unable to leave behind even a complete body. The Nine Flames Heavenly King, on the other hand, was not shocked, but rather pleased. Laughing loudly, he exclaimed, "As expected of our ancestors' spirit tool, it is really too powerful and strong. It obviously has yet to awaken, and there is even only a sword's hilt left behind, but already possesses such might. After we collect it, its might would reach pseudo-eternal river tier, at the very least. Then, when we completely combine it with the divine sword, it would not be difficult to kill a low-level eternal river tier elite." He was so pleased that he had revealed a considerable number of secrets. Firstly, this god tool was not complete, but rather had been broken. Secondly, the Nine Demons' sword should have been broken up into quite a number of parts, and what was buried here was the sword hilt. Thirdly, the Chong clan should have obtained information about the location of the other broken parts of the divine sword. This also meant that this altar was not the only one in existence. Ling Han's heart beat madly. The problem now was that the Eternity Sky Emperor had not gone to collect the other parts of the Nine Demons' sword first. Otherwise, his current battle prowess could have possibly leaped into pseudo-eternal river tier. This was invincible power on the joint peace planet. Sword light flashed out in gradually quicker succession, and even the Nine Flames Heavenly King did not dare continue to stay here. It was not that he could not defend against such might, but rather doing so was not worth it. He would just be wasting his stamina, and with how closely the sword's light was flashing out, the whole altar would soon be destroyed, so he would no longer need to consider the problem of Ling Han stirring the waters any further. He was sure that if the latter was still inside the altar, he would definitely be killed by the might of the god tool. If he still managed to survive from that, that would be really too illogical. Long. Finally, the altar that was as tall as a mountain crumbled and turned into ruins. However, sword light was still asterisk and slashed towards the heavens, tearing apart the skies itself, its terrifying might on full display. Now was the most violent time for the Nine Demons' sword. Xiao, in the distance, a figure streaked through the air. He was of sturdy build, and also had a long cloak billowing behind him. However, it was bright crimson and fluttered wildly in the air. There were similarly 9 black-colored balls of light behind his back, but they were not flames, as they were so black that they seemed rather eerie. Imperial brother. The Nine Flames' heavenly king rushed up to greet him. The Eternity Sky Emperor, one of the three greatest overlords of the joint peace planet. There was a chaotic air entwining his whole body, and his features could not be clearly distinguished. It seemed like his features were constantly changing, but whoever took a look at him would definitely be able to recognize him on their next meeting. This was a unique bearing, just like how Empress Xing had one. It was obvious that not many had even glimpsed her true face, yet they would definitely not mix her up with any other women. The Eternity Sky Emperor stopped, his tall figure seemingly capable of supporting the sky itself. In front of him, even the heaven and earth seemed so small in comparison. His eyes swept over, and he said, "Very good. The air of violence inside the Nine-Demon Sword has been completely released. This is the ancestral spirit tool of our Chang clan, and has an unbreakable link with the bloodline of our Chang clan. Later, I shall collect it with a secret technique, and success would be mostly assured." "Congratulations, Imperial brother." The Nine Flames' heavenly king laughed loudly. "The sword's hilt is the easiest to collect. In the future, after we collect the remaining 3 segments of the sword's blade, we will be able to let our ancestral weapon shine with its supreme brilliance once more. But, Imperial brother, the Nine-Demon Sword has been buried for millions and millions of years. Furthermore, it is an extremely ferocious object in the first place, and now, its air of violence is sky-high. Even if we have a link through our bloodline, Imperial brother should still not be too careless." The Eternity Sky Emperor laughed loudly and exclaimed, "Of course I know." A proud expression appeared on his face as he then said, "When I will have collected the Nine-Demon Sword, I will sweep aside the J-Drop and conquer the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. After that, I shall take Empress Xing into my imperial harem." Right, so after all the trouble, it was still for the sake of obtaining Empress Xing. Although he was full of great goals and magnificent aspirations, wanting to conquer the other great majestic empires and unite the entire joint peace planet, his last words had still revealed his true nature. He was filled with longing for Empress Xing. However, even this supreme overlord was so captivated by Empress Xing that his lifetime goal was to take her into his imperial harem, showing how charismatic this Empress Xing truly was. "A guy that will bear sons without behinds." Ling cursed internally, but the present him could only watch helplessly and could not do anything at all. This kind of helplessness made him feel very displeased. "Hee, it is time for our feud with the J-Drop Majestic Empire to be resolved completely." The Nine Flames' heavenly king revealed a sinister killing intent. "That's right." The Eternity Sky Emperor humphed, a similar killing intent burning in his eyes. Sword light filled the air, endless and boundless. The air of violence endlessly condensed and was then dispersed. At this instant, it had reached its maximum. Finally, it transformed into a colossal human figure, focusing on the Eternity Sky Emperor and the Nine Flames' heavenly king. "Imperial brother, just leave this guy to me. You go and collect the Nine-Demon Sword." The Nine Flames' heavenly king declared heroically. "All right," the Eternity Sky Emperor shouted, and pressed a palm directly where the altar was among the ruins. Origin power condensed and formed a huge palm about the size of a mountain. Leveling up, it dug out a large amount of loose dirt. When the giant-sized humanoid aura figure saw this, it immediately slammed down with its fist, bringing with it a frightening attack to the divine sense. "Your opponent is me." The Nine Flames' heavenly king headed skywards to intercept this attack. Chapter 1068, Collecting the Sword. Chapter 1068, Collecting the Sword. "Let's take advantage of this chance. Let's quickly leave," the small dog suggested. "No, let's observe first and see how truly powerful this Nine-Demon Sword actually is." Ling shook his head. The Eternity Sky Emperor was digging there. Temporarily, there was no big movement. Meanwhile, the Nine Flames' heavenly king was already engaged in an incredibly fierce battle with the giant aura figure. This giant humanoid was a few hundred meters tall, its abilities frighteningly powerful. Even if there were a few thousand or tens of thousands of Sun-Moon tier cultivators, they would probably be insta-killed at the same time with one spiritual attack. Faced with this kind of great enemy, even the Nine Flames Heavenly King dared not be the slightest bit careless. Divine flame was burning all over his body, and it was as if he had become a god of fire. He was known as the Nine Flames Heavenly King, and his flames had a total of 9 colors. Every color represented a different ability that he could use. For example, the white-colored flame was the weakest, and if the color finally reached black, that meant that he was using his full power. Of course, summoning even the white flames meant that he had gotten serious. However, if he had summoned black flames, it would place a colossal burden on him. It was definitely impossible to maintain it for too long. Now, he was channeling green flames. This was the 5th color, which meant what he was treating this giant as a great enemy. But after only a while, the Nine Flames Heavenly King was compelled to summon blue flames. This was his 6th color. The giant aura figure did not have any vital points. It was formed out of violence and bloodthirst in the first place, so even if the attack it received was far above its own level, it would only turn into mist form. It merely needed to reform itself. However, its spiritual attack was incredibly terrifying. That was really something that could result in the death of a heavenly body tier elite if he was the slightest bit careless. The Nine Flames Heavenly King needed to use the divine flames to protect himself and refine the spiritual attacks heading his way. This was a collision of martial intent. Thankfully, the air of violence was in the end merely formed from the power seeping out of the god tool. Hence, there was a limit to its might. The Nine Flames Heavenly King was an actual living person, with endless power at his command. Thus, he merely needed to stabilize himself, and there would be nothing left to fear. Boom, boom, boom. The Eternity Sky Emperor endlessly dug up the earth. Where the altar had once been, there appeared an extremely deep pit. Theoretically, since the Nine Demon Sword was buried here, its air of violence should be sky-high by now. Yet, it was incomparably calm, like it was extremely ordinary underground and there was nothing special about it. Shwa. When the Eternity Sky Emperor dug to a certain depth, a brilliant sword light suddenly shot upwards. It was as bright as a rising sun, and the heaven and earth became incredibly bright all of a sudden, almost enough to blind someone's eyes. It's finally out. Yet the Eternity Sky Emperor cracked a grin. He stretched out a large hand and grabbed at that sword light. His large palm of origin power condensed, and this sword light was forcibly extinguished. The heaven and earth immediately returned to their original brightness. Wong. A broken sword floated up from deep within the earth. It looked very ordinary, and only the sword's hilt was left behind. The broken blade was less than 1/8 of the normal length of a sword. However, endless aura of dominance spread out from this broken sword. It was like a supreme elite had descended, and all common people could only kneel in submission in its presence. And in front of this broken sword, even elites of the heavenly body tier could only be considered to belong to the category of common people. The Eternity Sky Emperor was pleasantly surprised. He joined his right index and middle fingers together and drew a line across his left wrist. Instantly, blood gushed out. Every drop of blood was as sparkling and translucent as a pearl, extremely rich. This was a real divine medicine from blood and flesh. One drop of blood from a heavenly body tier elite would be enough to raise one's cultivation level greatly if a mountain river tier cultivator could refine it. At the very least, the advancement of a sub-minor level was definitely nothing difficult. Unfortunately, this kind of treasured medicine was absolutely not something a mountain river tier cultivator could bear. Whoever drank it would die as his body would burst with how potent it was. Nine Demon Sword, you are originally the ancestral weapon of our Chang clan. Now I am here, so quickly return to us. The Eternity Sky Emperor shouted loudly as he sprinkled his blood. Every drop of blood transformed into a huge mountain that crashed towards the Nine Demon Sword. The Nine Demon Sword seemed to be attracted by this fresh blood, and actually did not resist. Instantly, the fresh blood wrapped around it. The Eternity Sky Emperor was ecstatic. As long as the link through his bloodline was established, he would be able to collect this treasured weapon. It was in that short instant that all the blood was absorbed by the Nine Demons' sword. This treasured sword seemed to have a life of its own. One after another, streaks of light flashed onto the sword's blade as if it was breathing. It floated in the skies peacefully, its might reserved. Was it subdued just like that? Ling watched with clenched teeth. After the Eternity Sky Emperor obtained this divine sword, who could stop his steps in this world? Would anyone like that still exist? The Eternity Sky Emperor laughed loudly and flew towards the Nine Demons' sword. He stretched out his hand to grab the sword's hilt. If it was any other person, even if it was an elite at the peak stage of the heavenly body tier, he could not possibly collect the Nine Demons' sword, because its level was too high. Whoever had that idea would only be seeking his own doom. He was different, though. As a descendant of the Chang clan, the blood flowing inside his body was of the same roots as the blood that had been melded into the Nine Demons' sword upon its creation. The tips of his fingers had already come in contact with the sword's hilt. The smile on the Eternity Sky Emperor's face widened. But just at this moment, a sudden change occurred. The Nine Demons' sword shook and slashed out with a flash of sword light. It transformed into a massive blade thousands of meters long and slashed out towards the Eternity Sky Emperor. This attack was incredibly sudden. Thankfully, the Eternity Sky Emperor was an elite of the heavenly body tier himself, and he had long since known that the Nine Demons' sword's might was extraordinary. Naturally, he could not possibly be careless. Therefore, his hands immediately formed claws and pressed down on the sword light. Sword light swept past. Pooh! The huge claws the Eternity Sky Emperor had shot out were immediately shattered. He grunted and retreated 100 miles. When he raised his hands, he saw that a bloody mark had appeared on both his palms. Although the Nine Demons' sword had shattered the palms that he had formed out of origin power, the air of violence of this sword was really too terrifying. Sword chi swept forth unhindered, biting back at his own body. Yet the Eternity Sky Emperor laughed loudly. This was the Nine Demons' sword that he'd anticipated. Only this kind of might was what he needed. If it was not as powerful as this, how would he be able to use it to defeat the J-Drop Emperor and Empress Luanxing? Shua, the Nine Demons' sword exhibited its divine might, sending out slashes of sword light one after another. It was really too powerful. Even the Eternity Sky Emperor would be subdued and land in a disadvantageous position. Ha ha ha, still so powerful even with suppression from the bloodline. Then, in my hands, what kind of might would it be able to display? The Eternity Sky Emperor laughed loudly. I am even more expectant now. Nine Demons' sword, are you still unwilling to submit to me? I am the son of heaven and destined by the heavens. I am the descendant of the Chang clan, your destined master. The Nine Demons' sword was naturally not capable of replying. Its sword light interwove together, becoming more and more violent. This was a sword of violence, and had a very strong killing intent, even if he was a descendant of the Chang clan. So what? It only desired fresh blood. The Eternity Sky Emperor used a powerful move. For heavenly bodies appeared at the same time, and waves of chaotic aura surged out. It was as if he was a saint capable of splitting heaven and earth apart. The heaven trembled, and the earth shook. Divine light interwove together. Ling could no longer see the scene in the skies at all. He only felt multiple terrifying surges of power roll over him. The earth itself had shattered, and space was tearing apart. In the Black Tower, he was endlessly rolling around along with the movement of the flying dirt. Finally, he saw that the Eternity Sky Emperor had transformed into a giant that was thousands of meters high. The 9 balls of light had transformed into huge stars, forming a circle of light, wielded in the hand of the Eternity Sky Emperor and used as a weapon. Pa! A broken arm shot skywards, and then fell back down. Blood splattered all over in the air. The Nine Demons' sword did not have an arm. Chapter 1069, Obtaining the Sword. Chapter 1069, Obtaining the Sword. Ling was stunned. That was the Eternity Sky Emperor, one of the 3 supreme leaders of the joint peace planet. Yet one of his arms had actually been sliced off. One had to realize that this 9-demon sword was a god tool handed down by the ancestors of the Chong clan. This meant that it was of the same lineage as the cultivation technique that their clan practiced. However, even with this link between them, the Eternity Sky Emperor still had one of his arms sliced off. It was abundantly clear just how powerful this 9-demon sword was. If he were to obtain it, would Empress Luanxing still be a match for him? There was every possibility that she would be snatched by him and become his concubine. Ling Han couldn't help but feel extremely set off upon thinking of this possibility. He knew that his emotions were being affected by the Empress' tremendous charm, yet even so, he was still repulsed by the thought of her being snatched by another man. He didn't want to see Empress Luanxing falling into the embrace of any other man. Perhaps this kind of selfish thought would occur to any man who had ever laid his eyes upon Empress Luanxing. Ha 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 ha. The Eternity Sky Emperor's boisterous laugh boomed down from the sky. The radiant light dissipated, revealing his proud figure and the 9-demon sword, which was now firmly gripped in his remaining left hand. It was evident that he had obtained the divine sword. This divine sword was passed down through bloodline inheritance, after all, and the Eternity Sky Emperor was also extremely powerful himself. After sacrificing an arm, he was finally able to become the new owner of the 9-demon sword. Ling Han could feel the overwhelming power of the sword even from within the Black Tower. It was as if this sword could pierce through his soul and tear him to shreds. This was the 9-demon sword, a god tool at the Eternal River tier, meaning that it was at least a level 13 god tool. Even though it was snapped and broken, it was still extremely terrifying. This was clear from the fact that the Eternity Sky Emperor had still lost an arm even though he was incredibly powerful and had cultivated a corresponding secret technique. Moreover, this was only 1/4 of the god tool. If he were to find and obtain the remaining 3 parts, and then fuse them together, how devastating would its might become? The 9 Flames Heavenly King leaped to the Eternity Sky Emperor's side and asked, "Imperial brother, are you all right?" Since the 9-demon sword had already been obtained, the murderous aura in this place all started to dissipate. The gigantic gathering of murderous aura naturally started to dissipate as well. "It's nothing," the Eternity Sky Emperor replied casually. "I merely lost an arm. It'll be fully healed after half a year of rest." This was no small wound, yet compared to his increase in strength, such a wound indeed paled in comparison. "I'll hand the remaining matters to you. I have to finish refining this sword, and when I'm done, obtaining the remaining 3 blade segments will become much easier," the Eternity Sky Emperor said. Understood. The 9 Flames Heavenly King immediately accepted the command. The remaining 3 sword segments also possessed overwhelming murderous aura, so it was necessary for them to construct sacrificial altars to suppress them before they tried to obtain the sword segments. Otherwise, it would be tremendously difficult for the Eternity Sky Emperor to succeed even if he already possessed the sword hilt, and even if he was a descendant of the Chong clan. The Eternity Sky Emperor turned around and left, tearing through space as he did so. There was strong killing intent in the 9 Flames Heavenly King's eyes as he swept the surroundings with his gaze. He knew that Ling Han had been hiding in some obscure location before, though he didn't know how Ling Han had managed to hide his aura. Even though he had launched a flurry of attacks, he had still been unable to force Ling Han out of his hiding place. Right now, he was still unable to determine whether Ling Han was still in this place or not. He detested this ant that had almost ruined their sacrifices, and he dearly wished to stomp this ant to death. However, he didn't have the spare time to stand guard here. In any case, the Eternity Sky Emperor had already obtained the hilt of the 9-demon sword, meaning that his battle prowess had already soared to the pseudo-eternal river tier. Thus, there was nothing to worry about even if the secrets behind their actions were leaked. That being the case, he turned around and left after looking around for one last time. He still had many matters to attend to. Ling Han finally exited the Black Tower after a long time. This was to avoid being caught in a trap, Although Ling Han felt that the possibility was small, would a mighty elite at the heavenly body tier lay a trap for a small junior such as himself? Ling Han parted ways with the small dog before retrieving his cloud-piercing shuttle and hurrying toward the Eastern Rain Nation's encampment. Because there was no murderous aura to block his path anymore, his speed increased to an incredible level. It took him a mere few hours to arrive above the furious river. By the looks of it, the rumors were true, and this furious river was indeed carved out by a powerful elite. If this elite wasn't the work of the Chong clan's ancestor, then it was the extraplanetary elite he had been battling against. Ling Han landed his shuttle. "Identify yourself." A group of soldiers instantly surrounded him. "I'm Ling Han, a student from the Scarlet Heaven Academy." Ling Han reported his identity to the soldiers. The soldiers didn't dare believe him unreservedly, and hurriedly went to invite members of the Scarlet Heaven Academy to verify Ling Han's claim. Ling Han. Zhao Luan immediately ran over. Upon seeing Ling Han, the expression on his face became indescribably strange. Suffering a heavy defeat on his mission to launch a surprise attack on the Golden Lion Nation had dealt a heavy blow to his confidence. It had been his first time leading an army, after all, and such a result was a humiliating stain on his pride as the son of a great general. However, he still consoled himself in his mind, convincing himself that his loss had been justified. After all, the enemy had ambushed them with hundreds of elites at the Sun Moon tier. Moreover, Ling Han had also been captured by the Golden Lion Nation and would almost certainly be killed. Right now, however, Ling Han was standing before him unscathed, so how could his expression not be dark? "How did you manage to make it back alive?" He humphed and said, "You definitely betrayed us and surrendered to the enemy. That's why they released you, as a spy." Zhao Luan's words sent a wave of commotion through the encampment. There was one kind of person that soldiers hated the most: traitors. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "Heir Zhao, through which of your eyes do I look like a traitor? Don't spout nonsense if you don't have any evidence. Otherwise, even though you're the son of great General Zhao, I'll still have to go with you to resolve this situation before the Empress." Zhao Luan humphed coldly and said, "We were ambushed, and I was only able to break through the heavy encirclement thanks to the protection of my treasured armor. How were you able to escape? Moreover, you've returned several days after me. So is it wrong for me to assume that you surrendered after being captured?" Since he hadn't been able to kill Ling Han on the battlefield, he might as well pin another crime to his name. This was a crime that concerned betrayal. If Ling Han was found guilty, there would be absolutely no need to interrogate him before the Empress. Rather, they would be able to punish him according to military regulations and kill him on the spot. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Heir Zhao is truly a brilliant storyteller. The situation had been so desperate, and I'm neither at the Sun Moon tier, nor do I have any treasured armors to protect me. Thus, I could only escape without any regard for where I was heading. I only arrived back here after running around in a massive circle, so it's only natural that I arrived several days after Heir Zhao." Zhao Luan pointed at Ling Han and roared, "Enough with the excuses." Ling Han shrugged and said, "Heir Zhao, you need evidence to back up your claims. Otherwise, I'll take you to court for defamation." Zhao Luan looked at him intently before saying, "I will find the evidence." He aggressively swept his robe through the air as he left. Headstrong and narrow-minded. Ling Han critiqued Zhao Luan in his mind, and then immediately headed off to find the Ninth King. The matters surrounding the Nine Demons' Sword were incredibly important and had to be reported as soon as possible. Otherwise, the Eternity Sky Emperor would genuinely be able to act as he pleased if he were to obtain the complete Nine Demon Swords. Ling Han. Shui Yinyu came out to meet him, and tears involuntarily flowed down her face when she saw him. The assault squad had been annihilated, and only Zhao Luan had managed to make it back alive. This caused pessimism to permeate through the camp, with everyone believing that those who had failed to return were all dead. Although Shui Yinyu was confident in Ling Han's abilities, she still couldn't help but become anxious after failing to see him return after 1, 2, and then 3 days. Now that Ling Han had finally returned, She felt as if a heavy weight had been lifted off her shoulders. At the same time, a feeling of weakness swept through her entire body. Chapter 1070, The Empress Military Expedition. Chapter 1070, The Empress Military Expedition. Ling Han walked over and hugged her lightly before saying, "Don't worry. Have you forgotten how many trump cards I have?" Shui Yinyu remained silent and simply buried her head in his chest. Ling Han was especially touched upon sensing this beautiful woman's care for him. However, this was no time to indulge in love. "We need to visit the Ninth King first. I discovered an earth-shattering secret," Ling Han said. He sought an audience with Hu Feiyun, and when she learned that he had returned, she happily invited him over, saying, "Zhao Luan actually dragged you into the assault squad and made me worry for so long. Thankfully, you're fine." Ling Han smiled and said, "Thank you for your concern, Ninth King. However, I discovered some astonishing information in the enemy camp, and I must immediately return to the imperial capital to report this to the Empress." Hu Feiyun blinked her large eyes and asked, "Is it really that serious?" The Empress had to deal with a myriad of affairs every day, and she also had to cultivate on top of that. Ling Han was merely at the mountain river tier, so what right did he have to request an audience with the Empress? It's extremely serious," Ling Han said with a nod. Hu Feiyun pondered for a moment, and then promptly said, "Okay, we'll return right away." If she didn't go, Ling Han would have absolutely no way of meeting Empress Luanxing. Her personality was fairly rash, and she immediately handed full control of the army to Zhao Luan. She had slacked off the entire time anyway, so this had absolutely no impact at all. Although Zhao Luan fervently opposed her decision, how could he stop the Ninth King? Ling Han, Shui Yinyu, and the Ninth King squeezed into the cloud-piercing shuttle and immediately set off for the chaotic Star's majestic empire. They had spent a full 2 months when marching there, yet they only needed a mere 3 days to return. It could be seen just how quick the cloud-piercing shuttle was. When they arrived at the majestic empire's capital, Ling Han landed the cloud-piercing shuttle before the city gates. No one dared to fly flight treasures into the imperial capital. If they did, they would be immediately shot down. Hu Feiyun led the way, so they naturally didn't come across any obstacles and arrived before the imperial palace in no time. Hu Feiyun asked the female guards to report their arrival, and after waiting for a few hours, they were finally invited inside by the Empress. They were given an audience with Empress Luanxing in a side palace. "Big sister!" Hu Feiyun immediately sprinted over and shouted, "I've missed you so much." Empress Luanxing was sitting atop a throne, which was elevated 1.5 meters above the ground to begin with. She exuded a profound might as she looked down at them. Her beautiful face was still shrouded in a misty aura, making it impossible to see her face clearly. However, her slender and flawless figure still radiated an irresistible charm. Ling Han kneeled on one knee and said, "Ling Han pays his respects, Your Imperial Majesty." Shui Yinyu hadn't come with him, as there was absolutely no need for her to be dragged into this matter. She had only returned because she was worried about what might happen if she were to remain on the front lines. Zhao Luan was still there, after all, and who knew whether he would become deranged and do something crazy. Empress Luanxing gazed at Ling Han coldly, not calling for him to stand up, either. The pressure from her gaze was like the weight of a mountain. Even Hu Feiyun didn't dare speak up for Ling Han at this moment. No one could challenge the Empress' might. "You're a member of the army yourself, so why did you encourage the Ninth King to return?" Empress Luanxing finally spoke, and there was a hint of displeasure in her voice. Ling Han realized that the Empress wasn't angry about them returning without regard for the battle on the front lines. Rather, she was displeased about his influence on Hu Feiyun, who had returned on his whim. He had no time to worry about this, and he said, "This subject has discovered an astonishing secret that I must immediately report to your Majesty. However, this subject's status is low, preventing me from seeking an audience with you, your Majesty. Thus, I could only seek help from the Ninth King." "What secret?" Empress Luanxing finally put the matter regarding Ling Han's influence on the Ninth King aside, at least for the moment. Ling Han organized his thoughts before reporting to the Empress. He started from how the assault squad had been ambushed by the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire and recounted all the way until how the Eternity Sky Emperor had obtained the Nine Demon Sword. Ah! The color immediately drained from Hu Feiyun's face. She shook Empress Luan Xing's arm and frantically said, "Big sister, what should we do?" Empress Luan Xing remained calm and composed. She said, "I had heard that an imperial empire had existed on the Joint Peace Planet countless years ago. This empire was ruled by the ancient ancestors of the Chang clan. However, a large battle erupted, resulting in the destruction of the empire that was ruled by the Chang clan. The empire that usurped their place was the J-Drop Imperial Empire. However, the J-Drop Imperial Empire also suffered several great calamities, which caused all of their elites to die. There was no young generation to replace them, causing their overall power to fall dramatically. In the end, the Chang clan rose again and established the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, which remains hostile toward the J-Drop Majestic Empire to this day." Ling Han couldn't help but feel surprised upon hearing this. So there's actually so much history and deep hatred between the two other majestic empires. If that's the case, that means the J-Drop Majestic Empire and Eternity Sky Majestic Empire have both had supreme elites at the Eternal River tier. The Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire has the weakest origin and has only existed for a mere 1 million years or so. This was an incredibly long time if placed in the small world, yet in the immortal realm, 1 million years was genuinely not a long time. Which of the two other majestic empires didn't have a history of over 100 million years? If one were to take their preceding empires into account, this number would increase to an even more frightening amount. Empress Luan Xing ferociously stood up and said, "I'll personally lead a military expedition." "Big sister, the Eternity Sky Emperor has already obtained the Nine Demon Sword, so why don't we ask the J-Drop Emperor to target him together with us? Otherwise, it'll be too dangerous." Hu Feiyun immediately tried to dissuade the Empress. "No need." Empress Luan Xing was brimming with confidence. Ling Han knew that part of her confidence stemmed from the absolute beginning stone, a stone that could absorb all attacks. Although the Nine Demon Sword was powerful, it was only at the Eternal River tier, which was far below the upper limit of what the absolute beginning stone could absorb. With this stone in hand, Empress Luan Xing naturally didn't need to worry about the Nine Demon Sword anymore. Empress Luan Xing glanced at Ling Han for a short moment. It was evident that she had guessed his thoughts. Ling Han wore a serious expression and didn't show a hint of smugness. Empress Luan Xing retracted her gaze upon seeing this. Heavenly bodies undulated behind her as she took a step forward and shot into the sky. She immediately became a small that disappeared in the distant sky. This Empress was extremely swift in her decisions, and she immediately set off upon saying that she would lead a military expedition. "Let's head off too." Ling Han hurriedly ran out of the Imperial Palace with Hu Feiyun. However, they weren't Empress Luan Xing, so they obviously didn't dare to fly in the Imperial capital. They left the Imperial capital before retrieving the cloud-piercing shuttle and flying toward the Eastern Rain Nation. The Golden Lion Nation had already retreated by the time that they arrived. No one on the front lines knew that Empress Luan Xing had already fought a battle against the Eternity Sky Emperor. They were all stumped as to why the Golden Lion Nation had suddenly retreated. They could only speculate that it was because the secret of the Golden Lion Nation having the support of elites from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire had been revealed. Perhaps they were afraid that the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire would launch an all-out war, and thus they chose to retreat to avoid this scenario. The war suddenly concluded. However, Ling Han knew that Empress Luan Xing had definitely won. At the very least, she had had the advantage. The Absolute Beginning Stone is so kick-ass. If it hadn't been for the Absolute Beginning Stone, it was extremely likely that Empress Luan Xing would have suffered a defeat. Moreover, if it weren't for the fact that the Eternity Sky Emperor only had the hilt of the Nine Demon Sword, it was possible that even the Absolute Beginning Stone wouldn't have been able to block his attacks. The Absolute Beginning Stone was only the size of a palm. After all, so how many strikes could it block? The Eternity Sky Emperor had already been severely wounded, so his strength had definitely been affected. Add to that the might of the absolute beginning stone, and Empress Luanxing was able to defeat him. However, no one knew what the result of their battle was. Was the Nine Demons' sword still in the Eternity Sky Emperor's possession? Or had it been snatched by Empress Luanxing and become her spoils of war? It was worth noting that the Nine Demons' sword was a god tool at the Eternal River tier, so even Empress Luanxing wouldn't be able to refine it. This was because her bloodline wasn't related to that of the sword, and her cultivation level was also far from being strong enough to suppress the sword. An empire level higher than Majestic Empire. Blame the author for his naming. Chapter 1071, Crime of Treason. Chapter 1071, Crime of Treason. The war ended, and after everyone returned to the imperial capital, Zhao Luan immediately handed an indictment over to the Ministry of War, reporting Ling Han's action of defecting during the war. Zhao Luan was deputy commander of the troops, so the indictment he handed in naturally was taken seriously by the Ministry of War. What more when Zhao Luan was also the only son of the great General Zhao. His status was considerably noble, so no one would dare to treat this as a small matter. Hence, a large-scale investigation was immediately launched. The situation was indeed quite suspicious. Ling Han might be extremely genius. This was a publicly acknowledged fact. However, no matter how much of a genius you were, your actual cultivation level was there to be seen. You were only at the peak stage of the medium extreme, and even if you could exceed 5 stars in actual battle, that would only be battle prowess worth the early stage of the consummate level. There had been so many students in the middle stage, late stage, and peak stage of consummate level, and they had all been captured. How was it that only he managed to escape? Following the end of the war, the captured students were naturally released. Some of them swore that they had seen with their own eyes that Ling Han had been summoned to be interrogated by the enemy soldiers, after which he was no longer imprisoned together with them. It seemed like there were also witnesses as well. False accusations. These are all brazen false accusations. After Shui Yinyu heard it, she was naturally incredibly furious. She knew some of Ling Han's secrets. With the Black Tower, how could Ling Han have been captured? Furthermore, Ling Han had discovered the conspiracy of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, allowing the Empress to move personally. That showed how important the information that Ling Han had brought back was. Ling Han was a subject that had done outstanding service for the Empire, yet Zhao Luan was presently making use of his public office to avenge a private grudge. He had also collaborated with others to frame Ling Han. This was really the style of a vile character, shameless to the extreme. Ling Han chuckled and said, "I have snatched his favorite, so he is using underhanded means to pay me back. The more shameless and contemptible his means are, the more it shows how much he is hurt." Shui Yinyu rolled her eyes at him and asked, "You are actually not the slightest bit worried?" Zhao Luan was now boosting support for his campaign, building up the public opinion that Ling Han was a traitor to the Empire. Once everyone believed Ling Han was a traitor, then no matter what the truth was, it would no longer be important. By that time, would the Shui clan still be willing to marry their daughter off to Ling Han? Ling Han smiled and said, "If worrying was useful, then I would worry. Who asked me to be isolated and without help? You can ask the Ninth King for help." Shui Yinyu piped up immediately. Ling Han shook his head. Empress Luanxing had already expressed displeasure over the relationship between him and Hu Feiyun. If he went to ask for the Ninth King's help at this moment, he was afraid that the Empress would really do something to him. "Don't," he said. "Zhao Luan is only a clown performing his antics. As long as one person speaks up, then no matter how much these people are jumping all over the place, it would be a waste of effort." "Her Imperial Majesty, the Empress?" Shui Yinyu reacted. "My wife is truly clever. If Empress Luanxing was willing to speak up, then with her absolute authority, she was naturally capable of resolving this matter. But the problem here was that it merely implicated a minor 9th-ranked military general. How could such a trivial, small matter possibly reach the ears of her Imperial Majesty? The Empress was naturally extremely busy and still had to concentrate fully on cultivation. She was the backbone of the empire. Without the Empress to support the heavens, The chaotic star's majestic empire would have long since been annexed by the other two majestic empires. Thus, how could the Empress possibly bother with this kind of small matter? Ling Han smiled faintly. Shui Yinyu did not have an official rank and had never used power of the nation. How could she possibly know that as long as Empress Luanxing wanted, she would be able to know each and every move in the whole empire? Of course, this was much too big a strain on her mentally and physically. Empress Luanxing would definitely not do that. However, the imperial capital was the most important location of all and was naturally under the complete control of this empress. He had revealed a great conspiracy of the Eternity Sky Emperor, yet Empress Luanxing had not conferred any rewards to him. This was obviously done on purpose. She most likely wanted to make use of this opportunity to regulate the discipline in her empire and warn some people not to go too far. Empress Luanxing had never declared her position on this matter, yet Ling Han already understood it. It was because they were both smart people, and because Ling Han himself was the leader of his own empire, though his Great Ling Empire was much smaller in comparison. The matter was still developing. News about Ling Han defecting and committing treason, and that he would soon be punished, spread throughout the whole imperial capital, causing quite a number of people who did not know the truth to feel great pity for him. He obviously had such great future prospects, so why had he chosen to defect? No force would accept betrayal. This was the bottom line. Under massive pressure, many people drew a clear line between themselves and Ling Han. Even Li Weiwei was no exception. She visited Ling Han's place personally and informed him that the left minister had exerted very great pressure on her, telling her not to meet with Ling Han anymore. Although Li Weiwei might be rebellious, if it was left minister's strict command, she would not dare to go against it. Hence, she could only offer an apology to Ling Han. Ling Han was still quite touched. After all, she was the daughter of the left minister, her status noble. It was already quite remarkable that she would deliberately come and inform him of this. She was really treating him like a friend. It was impossible that the investigation would go on endlessly. After another 2 days, the Ministry of War decided to hold a public trial for Ling Han, and the time was decided to be on the noon of the next day. Those that held an official rank of the empire could not be punished by anyone after simply declaring they should be punished. Of course, the Empress was an exception. She possessed supreme authority. Thus, the Ministry of War had to first conduct a public trial to judge whether Ling Han had committed treason or otherwise. Once it was confirmed, they would be able to apply to the Empress to revoke Ling Han's official rank of a 9th-ranked military officer. After that, they would be able to punish him as they wished. From this, it could also be seen how important an official rank was. The investigation was divided into a normal investigation and a public trial. In a normal investigation, the Ministry of War would imprison Ling Han and conduct an interrogation, but the process would not be made public. Only the final result would be announced. The public trial was the exact opposite. During the investigation, outsiders were allowed to stand by and watch. Because the crime that Ling Han had possibly committed was treason, the effects were too widespread. Hence, the Ministry of War decided to conduct a public trial. Of course, it was unknown whether Zhao Luan had any part in encouraging their decision. Perhaps he wanted to see Ling Han be convicted in public. And when such an important matter had occurred, the casino would not be willing to be silent. They set out stakes on whether Ling Han would ultimately be convicted or otherwise. For example, would he be acquitted, or would his official rank be repealed? There were even stakes on whether he would be publicly executed. At this moment, the most frequently discussed topic in the entire imperial capital was the matter of Ling Han's treason. Great General Sha's residence. Sha Yuan laughed loudly and asked, "The public trial will be tomorrow, right? Hee, this guy is going to be out of luck. With so many witnesses' testimonies, he would definitely be nailed on the pillar of shame. Haha, this is such a good chance, and if I do not join in, that would really not be enough to vent my grudge. Yuan Long, go and make arrangements. I am sure there should not be just so few people who have witnessed Ling Han's treason," he commanded calmly. "Yes, young master," a young man immediately answered from behind him. Ling Han, You are really the type that would only submit to pressure after having refused a polite offer. You must force me to make a move on you." Sha Yuan smirked coldly. "Once you no longer have an official rank, added with your crime of treason, your only fate will be death. After you have been imprisoned, I will discover all the secrets you possess." Chapter 1072, Testifying. Chapter 1072, Testifying. Today was the day of the public trial to decide whether Ling Han had defected and committed treason. It was exactly noon, and the Ministry of War sent out soldiers who brought Ling Han to a public court of the Ministry of War. This place was like an arena. In the center, there was a circular plain, and there were round after round of increasingly tall stairs all around. However, there were no seats. Only the 3 judges had seats. They occupied a high pedestal, looking down on Ling Han. Each one of them was in the sun-moon tier, and exuded an air unique to elites, forming a kind of intimidating energy by itself. Ling Han was not wearing any manacles or leg irons. Presently, he was only suspected to have defected and committed treason. However, as long as his crime was not proven, he was still innocent. He was all alone, standing in the center of the defendant's place. Meanwhile, there were people standing all around. Everyone was extremely curious. This man that had stirred countless waves and created endless ripples in the imperial capital in the last year. Would this time be his final performance before the end of the show? Shui Yinyu, Li Weiwei, and Ji Yuner were here. Lin Yu, Ma Xing, Yi Chengyun, and other friends were here. Zhao Luan, Shui Yinyu, Jiwuqi, and other adversaries were also here, and added with those that were here to watch the excitement, or those that were jealous of him, they were all waiting for the show to begin on the spectators' grandstand. Ling Han, do you plead guilty? The 3 judges were Kong Chenghe, Gu Tianchu, and Nan Minyang, respectively. Presently, this was a stern question from Gu Tianchu, his powerful spirit forming a terrifying spiritual intimidation aimed directly for the heart. If it had been any other person, he would have probably lost control of his divine sense and speak out the words at the bottom of his heart in a moment of distraction. The fact that these 3 could become judges naturally had its own rationale. They had amazing attainments in terms of cultivation of the spirit. In the first place, Ling Han's spirit was extremely strong and tough, and added with the fact that he still had the essence of the demon master as foundation, to intimidate him was naturally impossible. At least, it was not a feat that could be accomplished by an elite in the medium extreme of the sun-moon tier. He calmly replied, "I do not know what crime I have committed." Insolence. Kong Chenghe directed a fierce glare at him. In the public court of the Ministry of War, you still dare to speak falsely? Immediately confess all the details of your collaboration with the Golden Lion Nation. Ling Han broke into a smile and said, "This is something that's never happened in the first place, so how am I supposed to confess?" "Humph, we knew that you were going to deny it. Come, summon the first witness." Nan Minyang waved a hand. The first witness to appear was actually Zhao Luan. Looking at how he walked proudly down from the spectators' grandstand, Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head internally. This was really a case of villain would make a lot of mischief. You are the son of a great general, yet keep to beat down a minor character like me. Do you feel no shame? With such temperament, his achievements would be limited. Others kept saying that Zhao Luan was a genius, and the rate of his cultivation had by now exceeded that of the majority of those elites of the heavenly body tier who had been in the same age bracket, and that in the future, he was definitely going to break through to the heavenly body tier and so on. However, Ling Han hardly had any optimistic opinion of this person. Among those heavenly body tier elites he had seen, though they all had varying personalities, they all possessed supreme forcefulness without exception and were extremely confident in themselves. But in Zhao Luan, he only saw pettiness and determination to avenge every smallest fault. This kind of character was destined to be incapable of crossing over the barrier to the heavenly body tier for eternity. Indeed, Zhao Luan was presently able to advance rapidly in his cultivation. Firstly, it was because his cultivation level was still low, after all, so he could soar. Secondly, it was because he had a good father, who was willing to snatch all kinds of natural treasures for him. Otherwise, it definitely would be impossible that he would advance into the Sun-Moon tier in the next millennia. Fuck, you actually dare to look down on me? Zhao Luan had been glaring at Ling Han, and when he saw the disdain in his eyes, he almost exploded in fury. You are now a prisoner, a commoner no matter what. He would not recognize Ling Han's official rank in ant from a small world, a mere cultivator of the medium extreme of Mountain River tier. What right do you have to look down on me? He was the son of the great General Zhao, and this identity was enough to dominate over 99% of all the people in the empire. Just see if I won't get you killed. Zhao Luan revealed a cold smirk and uttered, Zhao Luan pays respects to the three lords. These three judges were all officials of the Ministry of War and had official ranks. Furthermore, they were all in a higher position than Zhao Luan. In a public setting, even Zhao Luan could not dispense with etiquette. Otherwise, it would not be an insult to the three of them, but an insult to the political system of the empire. Heir Zhao, you may dispense with the formalities. Though Kong Chenghe and the others accepted his respects calmly, they immediately greeted him cordially. How could they slight the son of the great General Zhao? Bootlickers, Li Weiwei mumbled. Her voice was not low either. Out of those present, probably only Li Weiwei, Sha Yuan, Zhao Luan, and a few other descendants of noble clans would dare to look down on the judges like this. Kong Chenghe and the other judges looked rather awkward, but they could not afford to offend the daughter of the left minister, either. Most importantly, she had not pointed right at their noses and cursed at them. Silence, Nanmin Yang rebuked. The aura of the Sun-Moon tier rolled out and instantly caused everyone's faces to pale. It was practically hard for them to even catch their breath. Kong Chenghe opened his mouth and said, Heir Zhao, you were one of the commanding officers in this military expedition and personally led the assault squad to launch a sneak attack on the Golden Lion Nation. Please describe in detail the proceedings at that time. Yes. Zhao Luan appeared very humble, giving enough face to these three people. The Ninth King and I had come up with a countermeasure, and leading the troops, we set off and crossed the furious river. He began to relate the happenings of that day. He was impartial in this recounting, though, and did not deliberately frame Ling Han for anything. It was because even without him making a move here, the subsequent over dozen witnesses were the true fatal attack. Zhao Luan smirked coldly. He had mentioned the Ninth King a few times, and that was to mock Ling Han. Such a huge thing had happened, yet the Ninth King had not appeared at all. She had not even spoken one word on his behalf. You must be very disappointed, right? This was natural. Who did not know of the Ninth King's esteemed, noble status? Furthermore, there was an unwritten rule, and that was that none of the 9 kings just like Her Imperial Majesty, the Empress, married. Since the 8 kings before her were thus, he was sure that the 9th king would be no exception. Her relations with Ling Han were too close, so Her Imperial Majesty would definitely interfere personally. It had to be known that it was not that Zhao Luan had not had designs on the 9th king before. He was confident as he was a man of striking appearance, and one with extraordinary talent, who was furthermore the only son of the great General Zhao. Though he was inferior to the 9th king in terms of status, was there any other in the entire empire that could be matched for her? However, he had only ingratiated himself with the 9th king once, and when he returned, he was sternly warned by the great General Zhao not to have any designs on the 9th king. He was not to even think of anything of the sort, or the great General Zhao would have no choice but to personally behead him and offer his severed head to the Empress in apology. It was that serious. I, Zhao Luan, am not fit for her. So who do you, an ant from a small world, think you are? Finally, Zhao Luan added his own analysis. At the time, I was wearing the treasured armor my father had given me. After fully awakening it, I could possess defenses on the level of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and would be capable of flight. Even so, it was still extremely difficult for me to charge back and bring back information about the invasion of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. Finally, the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire knew that their plans had been foiled, and thus chose to command the Golden Lion Nation to retreat. I would like to ask, If even I had such difficulty breaking out of such a heavy encirclement, and the subordinates that I had brought had all fallen into enemy hands, how could possibly a mere cultivator in the medium extreme of the mountain river tier manage to escape? Zhao Luan pointed at Ling Han, accusing him in a stern tone. Chapter 1073, Irrefutable Evidence? Chapter 1073, Irrefutable Evidence? Zhao Luan was really quite thick-skinned. While beating down on Ling Han, he did not forget to blow his own trumpet, completely seizing the merit of forcing the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire to retreat. In truth, practically no one knew that Empress Luanxing had moved personally, and thus, the fact that Golden Lion Nation, or rather the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, had suddenly retreated their troops could only be summed up to be a result of the secret being leaked out. They apparently did not dare continue the war. Otherwise, if a full-out war broke out between the two majestic empires, it would only be advantageous to the J-Drop Majestic Empire. Going by that account, Zhao Luan had really performed a great service because all members of the assault squad had been lost, and he had been the only one to escape. Additionally, he had also exposed the fact that the Golden Lion Nation had the support of elites from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. Initially, it was a grand failure, a rash act of launching an attack without even knowing the depth and ins and outs of the enemy, but in Zhao Luan's words now, it had become a great meritorious service. The level of shamelessness this man had was indeed awesome. Ling Han, what do you have to say? Nanmin Yang asked Ling Han. Ling Han smiled slightly and responded, just as Zhao Luan said, I am merely in the medium extreme, and no one would take me seriously. Then, isn't the fact I managed to escape very logical? Furthermore, I would like to ask a question of Air Zhao. Obviously knowing I am only in the medium extreme, why had you chosen me to be a member of the assault squad still? This, Zhao Luan paused. He had not thought that Ling Han would ask this question outright in public. Could he say that he wanted to make use of his official position to vent his personal grudge and borrow enemy hands to erase Ling Han? If he actually said that, even he would not be let off easily. Putting aside the fact that he would be punished by the Empire, what soldier would dare follow his lead in future? Wouldn't they be worried that he would do the same to them one day? Ling Han, don't change the topic. Zhao Luan quickly exclaimed. How could he allow Ling Han to take control of the proceedings? This was a trial to judge whether the latter had defected, so why was he bringing him into the matter? Don't think of changing the topic, Gu Tianchu said with a nod of his head. He was naturally siding with Zhao Luan. Ling Han, do not try to talk your way out of this. There are many witnesses who can prove that you were indeed captured that day here. Hence, do not deny it unto death, Kong Chungha said coldly. Oh, then I would really like to hear how I had been captured, Ling Han said, smiling. Summon the other witnesses. Kong Chungha appeared displeased. This brat was really the type to hold out hope until faced with the grim reality. One after another, young people walked into the public court. They were precisely those students of the academy that had joined the assault squad and were captured thereafter. Thankfully, Empress Luanxing moved fast enough, or they would probably still be imprisoned in their cells at this moment. Zhao Luan's eyes swept over the company, and he couldn't help but show a hint of shock in his expression. He had only found over a dozen witnesses, yet now, the number was almost 30 in total. Why were there more of them? I am Yu Ziming. I am Ming Yueran. I am Bu Xing. I am. These people recited their names one after another. However, some people needed only think of their backgrounds, and would be able to discover that their elders were either the subordinates of Great General Sha or in the direct line of descent of Great General Zhao. Zhao Luan instantly understood. So it turned out that Sha Yuan was on the same side with him on this matter. He had really not expected this. However, if they still did not manage to get an outsider brat killed with the combined forces of the sons of two great generals, that would really be bizarre. I saw with my own eyes that Ling Han was captured with us. I was even jailed with him in the same prison cell. It had only been half a day, and Ling Han was summoned for interrogation. After that, he did not come back again. If he had not defected, how could he have managed to escape the enemy troops and return back to base? Thankfully, Zhao managed to bring the intel back, forcing the Golden Lion Nation and the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire to retreat. If not, with a traitor like Ling Han as their planted agent, who knows how great the damage they would be able to inflict to our empire. These people all kept repeating accusations over and over, lying through their teeth. As the saying went, public opinion was powerful enough to melt metal. With so many people accusing Ling Han at the same time, whom should the masses who were unaware of the truth believe? Naturally, they were going to believe the side that had more people. Traitor. Among the crowd, someone called out first. Traitor. Even more people began to cry out, and instantly, the situation became earth-shattering. Even if Li Weiwei, Ji Yuner, and the others believed Ling Han, their voices of objection instantly vanished among these outraged cries. Shui Yinyu clenched her fists. As long as Ling Han entered into the Black Tower, it would prove that he could not possibly be captured by the enemies. But if the secret that he possessed a spatial god tool was revealed, then who knew how many people would make a move on him? Although he was freakishly talented now, his level was still too low. After all, elites like the Left Minister and the 7 generals could not possibly notice him. But once the secret of the spatial god tool was exposed, she was afraid that even her Imperial Majesty, the Empress, would be moved. This was a choice between a rock and a hard place. He either would be tagged with the label of a traitor, or would become the target of various elites. Whichever option it was, the consequences would be horrible. Why did the Empress still not come to resolve the situation? Could it be that in her Imperial Majesty's eyes, such a small matter was completely beneath her notice? Ling Han, what else do you have to say? Kong Chenghe asked balefully. I have nothing to say. Ling Han shook his head. Then you plead guilty? Gu Tianchu continued. Ling Han shook his head as he said, I really have nothing to say to this bunch of stupid birds. They are all lying through their teeth, so there's absolutely no space for communication. You, traitor, you still dare deny it. After committing such a disgraceful deed, you still dare to act arrogant. These witnesses were all filled with righteous indignation. They were actually called stupid birds in public. Ling Han said calmly, What we do the heavens see. Ask the heart of your cultivation. If you do so, would you be able to go on with a light heart? He used the 7-kill subduing soul technique to speak out these words. They merely reached the depths of their souls and did not possess any destructive ability. Suddenly, these witnesses all paled. Their hearts all endured a questioning, and even their souls were trembling. Ling Han, you actually dare threaten the witnesses. Zhao Luan exclaimed sinisterly. Boom, as a red sun rose up behind him, the aura of the sun-moon tear spread out without any reservations and constricted Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but become sluggish. He could even be unafraid of the air of eternal river tear, but air and aura were two different things. Now, this aura was real and solid pressure pressing down on him one. It was suppression of a whole major tier. This was a gap that no genius could possibly compensate for. Ling Han immediately broke out in a sweat. Ka, ka, ka. His godly bones were cracking, and his face flushed red instantly. He did not bend in the slightest, and merely asked coldly, Zhao, are you trying to obtain a confession under duress? In front of so many witnesses, you still deny it flatly. So what if I force a confession out of someone like you? Zhao Luan smirked icily. Zhao Luan, you have gone too far. Li Weiwei couldn't stop herself from standing up. Fourth young miss, excuse me. Xiang Chengyun immediately moved. His palm swept over, and Li Weiwei was instantly rendered mute. This was a complete suppression from one at consummate level towards another in the low extreme. The Lord Left Minister had commanded for Li Weiwei to maintain a distance from Ling Han as much as possible. For Xiang Chengyun, this was really a piece of good news. Thus, he was very happy to become a villain like that. In any case, he knew that it was definitely impossible for Li Weiwei to favor him. So what if he garnered her hatred? He only had to hold on tight to the Lord Left Minister. Ling Han, things have already come to this point. If you are still unwilling to confess, we can only hand you over to the torture devices. Nanmin Yang declared sinisterly. Chapter 1074, Will of the Empress. Chapter 1074, Will of the Empress. Ha ha ha. Ling Han laughed loudly. All right then. I would really like to see how are you all going to obtain a confession from me under torture. Ling Han, even if you are a glib speaker, do not think you will be able to escape today. Facts speak louder than words. Now that you have done this shameful deed, you should pay the price for it. The Empire will not accept traitors. Those witnesses had already recovered from the Ling Han's attack to their spirit. Naturally, they were all very energetic again, wanting nothing more than to rush up personally and force Ling Han's head to the ground, compelling him to kneel down and confess his guilt. Traitor, die. On the spectators' grandstand, someone tossed out an egg. It was naturally impossible that it would hit Ling Han, and was blocked by the shield of origin power that he had put up. Ling Han's eyes swept over, and he saw that it was a sneaky-looking young man. When the latter realized his eyes were focused on him, he immediately shrank back and did not dare meet his gaze. One of either Zhao Luan's or Sha Yuan's underlings, Ling Han immediately thought. They were trying to trigger a public outrage. True enough, with this toss from him, a great many became stirred up. Some people had come prepared and were throwing eggs. Some had not been prepared, and so they spat down at him. Though Ling Han had put up a shield and would not be hit by anything, nor be spat on, there was over 1,000 people here, and at least one half of them was doing something insulting to him. What kind of humiliation was that? If this spread out, how would Ling Han be able to face the public any longer? Zhao Luan smirked coldly. He did not care what the truth was. If he could use the crime of treason to kill Ling Han, that would naturally be the best-case scenario. But even if he couldn't, merely this scene alone was enough for Ling Han to suffer. How would he be able to hold his head up high in future? In this battle, he had won, and it was a complete victory. He was a minor character without any background nor foundation to speak of, so what qualified him to be an apt match for him? Zhao Luan looked towards Shui Yinyu, and saw that this seductive beauty was clenching her fists, her beautiful face pale. Involuntarily, a maniacal pleasure rose up in him. He had already gotten bored of young Luodan. Looking at her on her own, she was quite beautiful, but if she was standing next to Shui Yinyu, she was completely out of her league. You will not be able to escape the palm of my hand. Come, bring the torture devices, Gu Tianchu called out. With so many witnesses here, it was not too much for him to suggest the use of torture, and complied with the rules. Very soon, 2 men carried in a massive grindstone. This was a cruel torture. It was to crush one underneath the grindstone, and every bit of blood, flesh, and bone would be crushed into mush. However, immortals were hard to kill, so they could endure it for a very long period of time. Thus, the pain they had to endure was naturally even more extreme. Anyone would pale when speaking of this torture device. Zhao Luan and Sha Yuan both smirked coldly. Finally, they could make this commoner endure some real and genuine suffering. Those witnesses, meanwhile, smirked coldly. Some of them had no choice but to provide false testimony due to their orders, while others wanted nothing more than for Ling Han to vanish from this moment on due to their jealousy of him. Now that their plans were finally going to succeed, they were naturally pleased. Begin the torture, Gu Tianchu commanded, clapping down the judge's gavel. Wait. Just at this moment, a woman strode over. She was wearing a brilliant gold armor, just like a female goddess of war, exuding a supreme aura. We pay respects to the chief commander. The 3 judges quickly stood, circled around from behind their desks, and knelt down to pay respects to this female guard. Respects to the chief commander. Even Zhao Luan and Sha Yuan knelt, and everyone on the spectators' grandstand knelt. No one dared to refuse to pay their respects. Chu Qiushue, the chief commander of the Imperial Guard, an elite of the heavenly body tier. Whichever identity she was using, it was enough to intimidate the whole world. In the whole chaotic star's majestic empire, only 9 kings, the left and right ministers, and 7 generals could stand with her on equal level. However, Chu Qiushue was always by the side of Her Imperial Majesty, the Empress, and could be considered her trusted aide. In a sense, she could be considered the latter's representative, so her status was naturally even higher than the others. Such a powerful figure had personally arrived, who wouldn't be very scared and on edge at her presence. "Rise," Chu Qiushue said calmly. She was incredibly beautiful, but at this moment, who would dare to take a second look at her? Such a powerful figure, such an elite. If anyone actually dared to stare at her, wasn't it courting death? Only now did everyone dare to rise to their feet. They were all confused and filled with incomprehension. This was only a trial for a mere 9th-ranked military officer, so how had it attracted the favorite of Her Imperial Majesty? "I came here today to read out a commendation from Her Imperial Majesty," Chu Qiushue said, her eyes sweeping over Ling Han and Zhao Luan. Her Imperial Majesty wanted to present a reward? Then it had to be for Zhao Luan. Everyone was sure of this. Zhao Luan had discovered the huge conspiracy of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, finally culminating in the latter willingly retreating. This was a huge service, so it was logical that Her Imperial Majesty, the Empress, would reward him for this outstanding service. Still, she chose to do so at this moment. Wasn't that completely announcing Ling Han's death sentence in a roundabout way? It looked like they didn't even need to use torture, and the Empress was already declaring her position in this matter. Later, they would simply have Ling Han dragged out and beheaded. Even Zhao Luan thought that way, and involuntarily put on a proud look. He had just been rewarded by the Empress not too long ago, and granted the title of a 7th-rank military officer. Now that he was again rewarded for his service, no matter what, his official rank could be boosted to another rank. TSK, TSK, TSK. A 6th-rank military officer that had not even reached the age of 1,000. Even in the Empire, this was rarely seen. Who knew how many people would die of envy? Chu Qiushue drew out an imperial decree. Instantly, golden light shot out in all directions, exuding a frightening pressure. Her Imperial Majesty flourishes. Everyone once again knelt to receive the decree from the Empress. Imperial appointment for, Chu Qiushue read out loud. She was an elite of the heavenly body tier, so there was no need for her to read too loudly. As her divine sense spread out, her words could clearly spread to each and every corner. Ling Han as a 7th-rank military officer. Pooh! When they heard Chu Qiushue read out the last words, everyone choked. They stared with eyes wide open, their mouths so wide agape that a fist could fit inside. The imperial appointment from the Empress was actually not for Zhao Luan, but rather Ling Han. This. What was going on here? Wasn't this guy a traitor? Hadn't Zhao Luan exposed the conspiracy of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, and thus performed a great service? How come it was now the opposite? Everyone was stupefied, but would the chief commander Chu joke around regarding the will of the Empress? You had to be fuck joking. She was Chief Commander Chu, the Empress's trusted aide. Hiss, the Empress did not ask whether Ling Han was a traitor, but chose to announce her imperial appointment for Ling Han at this moment in time. Was her meaning not clear enough? The Empress was pleased with Ling Han here. You fuck asterisk, who else would dare proclaim that Ling Han was a traitor? If anyone dared to call Ling Han a traitor, wasn't that a direct slap to the Empress's face? Just ask the world, who would dare slap the face of the Empress? And was there anyone that bold? Zhao Luan's initially proudly upheld expression instantly crumbled. His body had even begun to tremble. As the son of great General Zhao, he was very awesome, but in front of Empress Luan Xing, he was considered fuck asterisk nothing, putting him aside. So what if it was his father instead? If the Empress wanted to kill him, she would similarly not be merciful at all. Otherwise, the 8 generals wouldn't have become the 7 generals in the first place. The Empress herself favored Ling Han, and yet you wanted to set him up. Wasn't that outright going against the Empress? To dare go against the Empress in the chaotic star's majestic empire, you had to be an idiot, the kind with no fear of death. Zhao Luan felt that he was presently an idiot, but he had a very healthy fear of death. Chapter 1075. One who rendered meritorious service should not be treated unfairly. Chapter 1075. One who rendered meritorious service should not be treated unfairly. Things had taken a new turn. Who would have imagined that the Empress would suddenly intervene? Such a trivial matter that merely involved a minor 9th-rank military officer actually caused the Empress to personally issue an imperial decree to be read at this point in time. Furthermore, a super elite the likes of Chu Qiushue was dispatched. A great many sensed even more than that. The Empress was definitely not just rewarding Ling Han. Ling Han received the decree. Chu Qiushue handed the decree over to Ling Han.
Yes.
Ling Han respectfully accepted the decree, yet was mocking her internally. Couldn't you have come earlier? You had to wait until such a crucial point, and almost caused him to be tortured. Chu Qiushue turned around and declared, Her Imperial Majesty has said that those who rendered meritorious service should not be treated unfairly, and we should not allow our loyal subjects to be bitterly disappointed. Those who rendered meritorious service. Ling Han had rendered a meritorious service? What outstanding merit had he actually rendered? Zhao Luan was suddenly shocked. When Ling Han had returned to the base camp, he immediately persuaded the 9th king to go back to the imperial capital. At the time, he only thought Ling Han was a coward after all. There were several hundred Sun-Moon tier elites on the opposite bank. Without an elite of the heavenly body tier standing guard, who would be unafraid? But now that he thought of it, Ling Han had to have found out some incredible secret. Could it be that the fact the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire retreated was also linked to Ling Han? Involuntarily, his face turned livid. At first, he had thought he had made a great achievement. Who would have thought that he had completely misunderstood it and made a mistake? Why? Why was it that whenever he tangled with Ling Han, it was always the latter who had the upper hand? Zhao Luan was so confused he wanted to pull out his own hair. Whichever aspect it was, wasn't he superior to Ling Han a few hundredfold? So why was it that he was always losing to Ling Han? Chu Qiushue's killing intense sword, her eyes sweeping over the 30 witnesses, causing these people to shudder in fear. Loyal subjects should not be bitterly disappointed. What did that mean? Pa! Chu Qiushue moved, her palm pressing down on empty air. Immediately, one man's head was crushed, and blood spurted out in all directions. This was the Ministry of War? To publicly commit murder in the Ministry of War, how overbearing was that? Of course, only Chu Qiushue would dare do something like that. She represented the imperial decree of the Empress, putting aside the fact that she had only killed these people without any official rank to speak of. So what if they did have official rank? No, don't kill me. It's Zhao. It's Sha. These people were just about to confess that it was Zhao Luan and Sha Yuan behind them, but Chu Qiushue did not give them this chance. Her palm struck out once more, and the heads of these 20-odd people were instantly crushed. Bright crimson blood and white brain matter splattered all over the ground. It was bloody, cruel, and forceful. This was a suppression. Everyone else was shaking in fear. This was the Empress expressing her stand on this matter. Don't think that just because the Empress resided deep in the palace, she knew nothing and could easily be fooled by her subjects. On the contrary, the Empress perceived even the finest details, and there was nothing that could be hidden from her. Obviously, Her Imperial Majesty was unimpressed by the web of relations that the great generals had interwoven among themselves. This was the Empress's majestic empire, and not the backyard of any great generals. However, the Empress had obviously left some face for Great General Zhao and Great General Sha. Though these witnesses had been executed, she did not let Zhao Luan or Sha Yuan be implicated in the matter. Otherwise, if she really wanted to pursue this matter, these two people would really be in for some serious punishment. Moreover, it was also very interesting that the Empress had appointed Ling Han as a 7th-rank military officer, because Zhao Luan was also a 7th-rank military officer. In the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, the two of them were completely equal in rank now. Chu Qiushue withdrew her hand and calmly said, "I have to return now. I shall not further disturb your public trial. You may continue with it." As she said so, she walked off. We see the chief commander off. The masses once again knelt. Chu Qiushue had left for quite a while, and the air unique to an elite of the heavenly body tier finally disappeared. Everyone seemed to have gone through a major illness, their expressions extremely unsightly. Just now, Chu Qiushue had deliberately released the air of the heavenly body tier. The intimidation from that was naturally frightening. If she had intended to kill them, everyone here would be killed in an instant, their spirits directly crushed under her pressure. "Are we continuing the trial?" Gu Tianchu asked, his voice trembling. What else was there to investigate? Her Imperial Majesty had already issued an imperial decree to promote Ling Han, and they were to still continue the trial? Fuck. Wasn't that putting their own heads on a tray? Were they tired of living to actually choose to go against the Empress's will? After strict investigation, we have confirmed that the previous witnesses were all framing Ling Han. The matter of defection and treason is completely false. Kong Chungha felt like he had swallowed a few hundred flies, but had no choice but to announce the verdict. Ling Han is acquitted and released. This matter is never to be mentioned again in future. Whoever dares to discuss the matter of Ling Han's defection will be dealt with under the crime of having slandered a meritorious official of the Empire. After saying so, the three men left as if they were fleeing from something. They really could not bear to stay any longer. They felt as if their faces would twitch every single time Ling Han's eyes swept over them. It was incredibly uncomfortable. Everyone left bit by bit. Very quickly, every detail of this public trial spread throughout the whole imperial capital. Naturally, no one dared to once again mention the matter of Ling Han's defection. Even the Empress had declared her position in this matter, and who would dare go against her judgment? In the chaotic star's majestic empire, the Empress was a true god. She was the heaven and earth. Her every word and her every opinion were worth more than anything. Meanwhile, Ling Han was finally able to return to the Great Ling Empire. Previously, he had already planned to do so. However, the sudden invasion of the Golden Lion Nation had interrupted his plans, and with such a delay, more than 2 months had passed. The things that should be prepared he had long prepared. He had also refined more alchemical pills which he left in the pharmacy. Money should still be earned. "I will go with you." Shui Yinyu knew that he had long since planned to return. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "You are my wife, and indeed, you should meet those brothers of mine. Furthermore, after we return to the Great Ling Empire, it should be time for us to have our wedding night so you can bear me a few children." "Go to hell." Shui Yinyu feigned anger, rolling her eyes at him. Ling Han laughed loudly. On the second day, he left the imperial capital with Shui Yinyu and set out towards the Great Ling Empire. They had the cloud-piercing shuttle with them. Unless an elite of the heavenly body tier made a move to snipe them out of the skies, it would definitely be impossible to catch them. Of course, when they returned to the Great Ling Empire, it would also be considerably dangerous. There were no elites standing guard, so even if Ling Han was a 7th-rank military officer of the chaotic star's majestic empire, it was useless. Who would care? However, after being away for so long, Ling Han was definitely going to return at least once. Previously, he had been unable to leave because of his status as a hostage. Now that he had the chance, he definitely had to return to the Great Ling Empire. Only if the Great Ling Empire really prospered and flourished would he be able to leave with a light heart and find his parents, son, and female friends. The cloud-piercing shuttle streaked through the air like it was a bolt of lightning. Very soon, even the eyes of the Mountain River tier could no longer see it. Even if elites of the Sun Moon tier pursued it with full effort, they could only feel powerless and too lacking to catch up. Half a month later, the cloud-piercing shuttle brought the couple to the Great Ling Empire. Finally, he had returned. Ling Han let out a deeply moved sigh. Although he was now already an immortal, he was still more accustomed to his original world. Wang. The great formation of the imperial capital activated and targeted the cloud-piercing shuttle. However, it was only a formation technique of shattering void tier level, so even with a boost from power of the nation, it could not possibly become any sort of obstruction to the cloud-piercing shuttle. It only trembled slightly, and the cloud-piercing shuttle had burst through the obstruction of the formation technique, descending down on the imperial palace. Who goes there? Abruptly, everyone in the imperial palace was stirred up. Chapter 1076, Return to the Great Ling Empire. Chapter 1076, Return to the Great Ling Empire. The moment the defensive formation technique broke, the totem naturally sent out a warning to those in the imperial palace at the first opportunity. Hence, Feng Piyun, the Rain Emperor, Murong Qing, Helian Tianyun, and the others all rushed out, and added with a large number of soldiers, they surrounded the cloud-piercing shuttle. Was this bullying them just because they were a nation without a monarch? They actually dared mock them like this. Humph, allow me to crush this wretched vessel. Helian Tianyun had a fiery temper. Though he looked to be less than 10 years old, the air he exuded was shockingly at the immortal level. He punched out, and it transformed into a roaring black dragon that shot out towards the cloud-piercing shuttle. Oh woo! A gigantic demonic beast appeared, and with a claw of its paw, the black dragon was shattered. It went incredibly easy. Ha 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 ha, I, the Azura Demon Emperor, have once again returned. What? Helian Tianyun and the others were all astonished. They naturally knew who the Azura Demon Emperor was. Not long before Ma Duobao had opened the sky, he had even come here with the people of the 5 sects to attempt to kill Ling Han, so he could snatch away the latter's fated opportunity. Hadn't this guy been subdued by Ling Han? Why had he now appeared here again? Furthermore, he had become so powerful that he could easily disperse even an attack from Helian Tianyun. It had to be known that though Helian Tianyun had just broken through to the immortal level, he had cultivated up to the shattering void tier in 2 lifetimes. When Ling Han opened the skies, his power had reached 14 stars, and after opening the sky, as a subject of the Great Ling Empire, he had also been rewarded by the heaven and earth. Though his good fortune was not as much as Ling Han's, he had still been given a boost of an additional 2 stars. In strength alone, he had already reached 16 stars. That kind of foundation was too deep and resounding. So the moment he advanced into the mountain river tier, his battle prowess would be able to exceed 4 stars, which was incredibly frightening. Yet the Azura Demon Emperor managed to easily disperse a full power attack from him. Then, how powerful had this demon become? More importantly, since he appeared, then what about Ling Han? Could it be that he had been murdered? Just at this moment, a tall, slender figure appeared. He raised a hand and gave a sharp knock on the head of the demon wolf. What are you strutting around for? Hee, this little Azura has returned to our homeland, and so had gotten a bit carried away. Please forgive me, master. The demon wolf that had been so majestic moments ago abruptly became an obedient puppy, waving that huge tail of his madly, pander, written all over his face. Fuck, he had really changed faces too fast, hadn't he? 4th brother, your majesty, master, young master Ling, Ling Han, Feng Piyun, Ding Ping, Ken Yi, and the 7 kings as well as the various guardians all exclaimed in surprise. As it turned out, Ling Han had returned. Big brother, 2nd brother, 3rd brother. Ling Han quickly ran over and embraced Feng Piyun and the others. Even though this group of men would not shed tears easily, they could not help but break out in tears now. Yet, at the same time, they were laughing loudly, which caused Shui Yinyu, who had followed outside, to look out curiously because she had never seen this face of Ling Han. This was the real Ling Han, wasn't he? In the imperial capital, where he was unfamiliar and all alone, he had been wearing a mask and closed off his heart. He had only let go of his facade at this moment and showed his truest face here. She looked on gladly. The more pleased this man was, the happier she was as well. Everyone had spotted Shui Yinyu, and had also sensed the powerful air she was exuding. That was a suppression from a superior level, a limitation that no genius could possibly step over. She was just like Helian Tianyun, at the immortal level. Oh, she is my wife, Shui Yinyu, Ling Han introduced, smiling. Shui Yinyu was both embarrassed and pleased. However, there were too many people here, so she was too embarrassed to pinch Ling Han. She merely gave a slight bow and said, Yinyu meets big brother, 2nd brother, 3rd brother. Just now, she had watched Ling Han call out to Feng Piyun and the others, so she was naturally aware that these three men were Ling Han's sworn brothers. Then what about me? Helian Tianyun was displeased now. I am fucking the ancestors' rank, so why has she not greeted me? Don't mind him, he's just a shameless old man pretending to be young. Ling Han shoved Helian Tianyun aside, causing the latter to yell out in anger. Ordinarily speaking, Ling Han should also call him an ancestor. Damn it! Damn it! Madam! Ding Ping called out loudly, slightly hesitant to look upon such a beautiful madam. Ling Han swept an eye over him and said, Not bad. I have just left for over a year, and you have already cultivated until the spiritual infant tier. This time, I will give you private lessons again, allowing you to advance into the immortal level before I leave. Fourth brother, are you leaving again? Feng Piyun muttered. Ling Han broke into a smile and said, This time, not only I will leave. You all leave with me, brothers. I have already established some foundation in the chaotic star's majestic empire, and I presently need you all to lend me a helping hand, brothers. Feng Piyun and the others were greatly pleased. They were all proud and powerful figures in their own right, each one of them an incredible genius. How rare was it for someone to be able to cultivate all the way up to the shattering void tier in a small world? They, too, longed to make their way in the immortal realm. It was only because Ling Han had been taken away as a hostage that they had to protect the great Ling Empire on his behalf. Now that Ling Han had established some foundation, they were naturally pleasantly surprised. Fourth brother, you are really incredible. I thought that I would have to stay here for more than a century to be able to see you again. The Rain Emperor laughed. This was not an overboard compliment. It had to be known that appearing in the kind of place that the immortal realm was, it was a given that Ling Han would have to start over from zero. Only Shui Yinyu was the clearest about the amazing accomplishments that Ling Han had made in this last year or so. The fact caused her heart to ripple and her eyes to become tender. Come. Fourth brother, tell us what you have gone through in the last year. Murong Qing pulled on Ling Han. All right, what cultivation level are you in now? This attracted everyone's curiosity. After all, the most crucial thing for cultivators was still cultivation level. Everyone here was his trusted comrade, so there was nothing that Ling Han felt the need to hide. Hence, he replied, the peak stage of the medium extreme. Pooh! Helian Tianyun abruptly choked. Only he had advanced into immortal level in this place, so he was naturally aware how difficult it was to advance in the mountain river tier. Putting aside the peak stage of medium extreme, even if Ling Han was only in the peak stage of the low extreme, it would have been inconceivable. It should be known that even he was only in the early stage of low extreme, and there was practically not even a sliver of improvement since he broke through. There was nothing that could be done. His cultivation resources could not catch up. In this place, how would he have been able to obtain true origin stones or various immortal level divine pills? You brat are a freak. You have always been, he exclaimed. Just imagine, the fact he had lived 2 lives was already awesome enough, yet he was still no match for Ling Han. Shui Yinyu, though, was surprised. She naturally knew that Ling Han had come by opening the sky, and she had also heard Ling Han speak of the origins of those close to him, so she knew that these people did not have a mortal-level background. But even with that, Helian Tianyun still managed to advance into the mountain river tier. This was too inconceivable. If she told this to others, probably no one would believe her. For them to be able to come by opening the sky in a small world, there were truly a number of super geniuses gathered here. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Come, let's speak as we walk. The 4 brothers, along with Helian Tianyun and Ding Ping, were those closest to Ling Han. As they drank wine, they heard Ling Han talk about his experiences in the last year and so. They all felt overwhelmed by emotions, wanting nothing more than to immediately charge out into this boundless immortal realm themselves to make their way in this world and have their own adventures. When Ling Han had finished his account, Feng Piyun and the others also talked about the recent situation in the Great Ling Empire. Restlessness was secretly brewing. Chapter 1077, Everyone Cultivating. Chapter 1077, everyone cultivating. Fourth brother, you have not returned for a long time, causing some people to have inappropriate ideas. Murongqing was the first to speak. Recently, when government decrees are relayed, they encountered obvious obstruction. Some of the people underneath are no longer willing to know their own place. The Rain Emperor humphed, killing intent burning in his eyes. When speaking of the management and government of a country, he was the most experienced. He was also the one among the four brothers whose killing intent flourished the most and was the most domineering. Ling Han smiled slightly. As long as one had enough ability, they would be able to easily suppress everything else. Attaching oneself to a majestic empire had at least one advantage, and that was that the safety of your nation would be guaranteed, and other nations would not easily launch an invasion into your territory. And even if there was an invasion, you would still be able to ask for help from your suzerain empire, just like the Eastern Rain nation previously. Thus, the possibility that the Great Ling Empire was facing an external threat was not high, but if there was internal strife among them, the chaotic Star's majestic empire would not be so free as to interfere in their internal matters. In any case, they only had to guarantee that this territory was still attached to the chaotic Star's majestic empire, and that was sufficient. This was an internal matter, so outsiders were naturally not going to interfere so easily. Ling Han said, "My three brothers, these are all just trivial matters. Today, we are pleased, so let's not speak of this sort of thing. We will drink and only stop when we are all drunk. We will get thoroughly drunk." Feng Piyun and the others were all open-minded people and immediately raised their cups and drank heartily. It was rare that Ling Han would get himself drunk. When he awoke on the morning of the second day, he realized he was lying on the bed, and there was a ravishingly beautiful, seductive beauty in his arms. Who else could it be but Shui Yinyu? He turned pale with fright and asked, "Did we do that yesterday?" Shui Yinyu was both embarrassed and irritated. She rolled her eyes at him and said, "You got drunk yesterday, and I helped you into the room. However, you kept holding on to me and wouldn't let go no matter what, so I could only stay by your side." In other words, he had been so drunk that he couldn't even do anything. Ling Han let out a sigh in relief and said, Good. If the first time happened in such a muddle-headed manner, that would be too much of a loss." "Pa!" Shui Yinyu immediately threw a pillow over, which pounded into his face. "I say, wife, was it because that I did not do you yesterday that you are currently dissatisfied and resentful?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Shui Yinyu was about to explode in anger. This lecher, this damn pervert. He actually had the face to say that? Schwa, schwa, schwa. Whatever she could grab, she threw over. At first, it was the other pillow, followed by the blanket. Then, she even tossed the cup and the saucer at Ling Han. Meanwhile, Ling Han quickly caught the projectiles and threw them onto the bed. When Shui Yinyu realized that there was nothing else she could throw, he chuckled and pounced on her, pushing Shui Yinyu down and imprisoning this seductive beauty beneath his own body. "Tisk, tsk, tsk. I am really too amazed with myself," he said in self-satisfaction. Amazed with what? Shui Yinyu was uncomfortable underneath his weight, her eyes soft. Even her delicate body had turned to water, soft and weak. "Due to my earnest, hard work, this place of yours seems to have gotten slightly bigger." Ling Han laughed naughtily. With a gentle squeeze, Shui Yinyu released a captivating moan. Damn pervert. Shui Yinyu felt like she was going to die from blushing. Why did this villain always like to grab her breasts? Weren't they just a couple lumps of flesh? Were the other parts of her body not considered flesh then? Woo. Her mutterings were lost underneath Ling Han's burning kiss. Very quickly, Ling Han ignited her passion, and she entwined her jade-like arms around Ling Han's neck, passionately kissing back. Bang, bang, bang. It was just at this crucial moment that a knock sounded at the door. Ling Han was greatly irritated. Who was it? He had just been planning to devour this bewitching vixen. "Little Han, wake up and go to the toilet." Helian Tianyun's snicker rang out from behind the door. Fuck. He knew that it had to be this old pervert. Ling Han sighed. Looking at Shui Yinyu, who was rapidly entering into a daze, he knew that he would not be able to devour this bewitching vixen today. Furthermore, this woman was extremely shy, so she would probably be avoiding him as much as possible in the next several days. If he wanted to devour her, he would have to wait a few more days. Forget it, he should deal with serious matters first. Ling Han went out and called over his 3 brothers, Dingping and Heliantiana. Then, he began to teach them the cultivation techniques of the immortal realm. It would not be proper for Ling Han to teach them the universal 8 desolation technique privately before he had gotten permission from Old Man Su, as the latter had been the one who had taught him. Thus, the cultivation technique he taught Helian Tianyun was what he had managed to obtain at the auction. Though it was not the highest level cultivation technique, it was definitely better than what he had obtained at the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Additionally, he could not privately teach them the cultivation technique of the Scarlet Heaven Academy either. There was a ban on such actions. Aside from that, Ling Han had not been able to afford redeeming higher-level cultivation techniques. My 3 brothers, you were not the main lead in opening the sky, so your strength could not possibly reach 20 stars, but you will still be able to reach 18 to 19 stars. I hope that you all can cultivate until you feel like you can advance no further before attempting to break through to the immortal level, Ling Han said. Feng Piyun and the others nodded. All of them were men of ambition, and were thus naturally unwilling to be ordinary immortals. If they were going to cultivate, they would become invincible among others of the same cultivation level. This time, it was not like when Ling Han had first entered into Chaotic Star's majestic empire, when he did not have any cultivation resources on hand at all. On the contrary, this time, the things Ling Han produced were not the slightest bit inferior to what an elite of the heavenly body tier could take out. After all, they were just ultimate treasures for the mortal realm, so no matter how expensive they were, there was a limit to their price. Moreover, the Jade Heaven pills that Ling Han concocted were a very profitable business. The rate at which he earned money from it was shocking. Meanwhile, Helian Tianyun sighed. He was a descendant of the dragon race, and had an advantage in terms of bloodline. He had not been in the immortal realm for many days before he had broken through to the immortal level with the aid of his bloodline. Thus, he had not cultivated his strength to the maximum, and this made him feel slight regret. Unfortunately, he could not possibly abandon this life for this reason and resurrect himself for a 3rd time. Could he? Where would there be so many ultimate treasures for him to squander? Treasures that could allow the soul to reincarnate were pitifully limited even in the immortal realm. Thankfully, strength of 16 stars could not be considered weak, either. After all, the Shattering Void tier was only one stage on the path of cultivation, and it alone could not possibly decide the future of a cultivator. Ling Han handed out the resources generously. He wanted to help his 3 brothers break through to the immortal level in the shortest amount of time, and that was with the prerequisite that they had to temper their foundations to an incredibly stable, solid extent. After that, he turned his attention to Dingping. He had indeed recognized this disciple, but he had not taught him for long. He was really too irresponsible as a master. Thus, after deep self-reflection, he began to drill Dingping. Dingping was having a miserable time. In the Black Tower, he screamed endlessly. His yells sounded so extremely tragic that anyone who heard him would shiver. That was how terrifying he sounded. In a few more days, the reincarnation tree would have completely matured. Ling Han broke out in a grin. This was his greatest rare treasure. To comprehend Tao underneath the reincarnation tree, every instant was an entire lifetime. This was practically cheating. The cultivation of origin power and stamina could all be boosted with the help of alchemical pills and various natural treasures. In comprehension, though, one could only depend on oneself. The reincarnation tree, meanwhile, would endlessly shrink down the time that one would need to comprehend Tao, or rather, extend it. Master, can I rest for a while? Dingping asked, grimacing. He was carrying a huge boulder on which Ling Han was seated. It was incomparably heavy, causing his arms to keep shaking. That was because Ling Han was using the divine patterns of gravity. Of course, he was only using a little of their effect. Dingping, who was merely in the spiritual infant tier, could not possibly bear the weight otherwise. No, run another 3 rounds. Chapter 1078. Advancing through the levels rapidly. Chapter 1078. Advancing through the levels rapidly. Ling Han would drill Ding Ping every day until the latter cried out in pain, but his improvement was also obvious. He did not know that possessing a certain kind of bloodline or rather being born fortunate, and thus possessing some kind of powerful power would allow his strength to burst 100-fold over. This was extremely terrifying. Merely this ability alone would allow him to possess battle prowess to surpass 2 stars in the immortal level. And that was an eternal boost. The gap in strength between each subminor level and the next should be about 10 times. Thus, a burst of 100-fold could compensate for the gap of 2 subminor levels. From this, it could also be clearly seen how massive the gap between each cultivation level and the immortal level was. That was why there were so few geniuses that could surpass 4 stars, while 5-star geniuses only existed in legends. Ling Han wanted to squeeze out all of Ding Ping's potential and train an awesome, brilliant disciple. For days later, the reincarnation tree finally matured completely. The treetop stretched out as wide as 300 meters, and there was the air of the great Tao wandering about the leaves. It was mysterious, powerful, and ancient. Ling Han had obviously watched it grow, yet he felt an ancient, aged feeling from this great tree, as if it had gone through millions and millions of years. A reincarnation tree that required 12 trillion years to mature grew up just like that. The Black Tower is even more awesome, Ling Han mused. His abrupt rise could not be separated from the help of the Black Tower. Otherwise, even if he had not died in his last life, he would now only be an alchemy emperor by now. In martial arts, however, his achievements would definitely be limited because the foundations he'd laid down in his early stages were really too terrible. This reincarnation tree had not grown naturally, but rather its growth had been expedited through my use of the mystical power of source power. Thus, the effects are slightly weaker. Small Tower appeared and explained to Ling Han, comprehending Tao underneath the tree is far from reaching the extent that one instant would be equivalent to a lifetime, but rather one day would equal a single year. That was already awesome enough. After another 10 years, the leaves can be plucked to be processed into tea leaves. The effects would be also better. You probably would be able to obtain the spiritual comprehension worth 10 years with a single cup. Unfortunately, my source power has been fully expended once more, and I can no longer expedite it further. Ling Han was already so nicely surprised there was no room for further happiness. He said, "Enough, enough. This is already awesome enough." That is because you are a frog at the bottom of a well, so you do not know that there aren't few treasures that can speed up the passage of time. Small Tower probably had let its tongue slip once more, for it quickly fell silent. I have to mend the Black Tower. If there's nothing important, don't come and bother me. As it said so, it disappeared in a flash, and no matter how much Ling Han summoned it, it was not willing to reappear. Fuck, I am the master in any case. This is really too disrespectful. Ling Han gritted his teeth. This small tower was really too much of a tsundere. Never mind, he'd first improve the abilities of those around him. Ling Han drew Shui Yinyu, Feng Piyun, and the others into the Black Tower, and had them comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree. It was madness. When one had reached the heights they had, what they lacked was the time to comprehend Tao, but underneath the reincarnation tree, one day would be equivalent to a year. What kind of concept was that? Really, even a dumb pig would be able to become a true god with that. At first, it was their comprehension of the profound secrets of heaven and earth that could not catch up with their advancement in origin power and stamina. Now, it was the exact opposite. Their spiritual cultivation had surpassed their physical cultivation, and it was their physical cultivation that was now holding them back. Thankfully, Ling Han was the alchemy emperor. If his ordinary cultivation could not catch up, he only needed to take alchemical pills to speed it up. In any case, since he was comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree, he had no fear that his cultivation level would advance too rapidly. However, the first to break through was still Ling Han. He was already at the peak stage of medium extreme, and now with the help of the reincarnation tree, the rate of his comprehension of Tao was practically like the speed of light. If an ordinary genius wanted to take this step, they would need a few hundred years' time at the very least. Even if Ling Han was a super genius, a few dozen years were still necessary, right? But underneath the reincarnation tree, a few dozen years would only become a few dozen days. Most importantly, Ling Han still had the essence of the demon master in him, which solved the problem of accumulation of origin power. Working on two tasks at the same time, what need did he have to worry about his cultivation level not speeding up in advancement? He drove the cloud-piercing shuttle out of the Great Ling Empire in advance and headed to an empty, uninhabited plane to get through the heavenly tribulation. Since there were dark currents in the Great Ling Empire, and some wanted to rebel, he would give them the opportunity. Otherwise, if these ambitious people hid themselves, the danger they presented when they exploded in the future would be even bigger than now. Thus, Ling Han strictly sealed off news of his return. Now that he had to go through the heavenly tribulation, he naturally could not choose to do so in the Great Ling Empire. Advancing a minor level, to the present Ling Han, was practically a kind of torture. He had to shatter his body and allow his godly bones to be tempered by the tribulation so that they could improve to another level. This caused him to shout repeatedly in agony. If Ding Ping had heard his screams, the former would definitely feel much better. This freakish master could actually also experience a time when he would scream out so horribly. After half a day, the heavenly tribulation dispersed. Ling Han used a drop of indestructible true fluid, and his body instantly recovered. He felt that his power had spiked drastically, and his godly bones were incredibly hard, reaching the sturdiness of level 4 godly metal. Now, though I am still unable to suppress an opponent at the peak stage of consummate level, I can still be completely unafraid of him. Even if I have to resort to a drawn-out battle, I would be able to wear him out to death, Ling Han said, smiling. His defenses, added with his recovery ability, were practically shameless. As long as they could not insta-kill him, his opponent would definitely lose hope. Putting Ling Han aside, it would be the Rain Emperor who improved the fastest. The height of his talent was almost no inferior to Ling Han's. He was only not as fortunate as Ling Han had been, and had not obtained a Black Tower. 2 months later, the Rain Emperor's power had advanced to 19 stars of the Shattering Void tier. The might of the reincarnation tree was on full display. The Rain Emperor began to comprehend the secrets of a mortal level, and with Ling Han and Shui Yinyu as consultants, he would definitely be able to break through in a mere few days' time with his talent. Of course, a few days of comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree were equivalent to a few years of physically comprehending it. Another dozen or so days later, Feng Piyun's power also advanced to 18 stars of Shattering Void tier, whereas Morong Qing had 17 stars. The gap between the four brothers' talent could also be perceived from this. The Rain Emperor was practically as talented as Ling Han. Feng Piyun was slightly inferior, and Morong Qing was slightly inferior to Feng Piyun. But even so, Shui Yinyu still got a scare. This was power of 17 stars of the Shattering Void tier. The battle prowess they could exhibit would at least be 22 stars, or perhaps even stronger than that one. How many geniuses of such caliber could be found in the chaotic Star's majestic empire? Yet the small Great Ling Empire actually had 4 of them. Furthermore, Helian Tianyun had also reached 16 stars, which was still very frightening, while Ling Han's disciple, Ding Ping, was also a little monster as he could increase his power 100-fold. If he could also attain power of 18 to 19 stars of the Shattering Void tier before he broke through, then when he broke into the immortal level, his battle prowess might even be able to surpass 6 stars. 6 stars, just the thought of it was frightening to Shui Yinyu. That was because a 5-star genius merely existed in legends, and now there had actually appeared a 6-star genius. Even Ling Han was no match for that. Ling Han was not about to be jealous of his own disciple. Strength was merely the most important part of battle prowess, but not all it was about. He was sure that if the Rain Emperor battled Ding Ping on the same cultivation level, it would definitely be Ding Ping who would lose. If it was against Ling Han, Ding Ping had even less hope for victory. His master's freakish physique and recovery abilities could not be dealt with. Additionally, Ling Han discovered that his present strength was increasing further and further. The Nine Dragons Tyrant Body Art and Universal 8 Desolation Technique were both supreme techniques, allowing his stamina to burst and his origin power to become pure. Vaguely, his pure strength would reach the height of 5 stars. Another several days later, the Rain Emperor, Feng Puyun, and Murong Qing broke through into the mountain river tier one after another. The Great Ling Empire finally looked a sliver what a royal empire should be like. Chapter 1079, Words of Mutiny. Chapter 1079, Words of Mutiny. In terms of who had advanced the most in cultivation levels, obviously Ding Ping was the one. In the beginning, he had just broken through to the spiritual infant tier. Now, 3 months later, he had already advanced to the Shattering Void tier. In total, he had advanced 3 major tiers and almost 30 minor levels. This was a feat that would cause one's head to go numb even if placed in the immortal realm. Apart from Ling Han, was there any other person who possessed a reincarnation tree? It looked like a short 3 months, yet Ding Ping's true Dao comprehension time had actually spanned almost 90 years. Of course, one could only comprehend Dao with their spirit when cultivating under the reincarnation tree. Their physical body would remain at its initial cultivation level. In other words, Ding Ping's cultivation time wasn't genuinely 90 years. In any case, however, it was still definitely at least 30 years. Ding Ping was brimming with confidence right now. He yearned to surpass his 3 uncles and genuinely become helpful to Ling Han. The sight of Ling Han being taken away continued to replay itself in his mind. He didn't want to be separated from his master in such a way ever again. Ding Ping was willing to toil through hardships, and his talent was also outstanding to begin with. Coupled with the resources he had now, it was only natural that his cultivation improved at a rapid pace. Contrary to his incredible cultivation speed, the cultivation speed of the Rain Emperor, Helian Tianyun, and others all slowed down after they broke through to the immortal level. It was genuinely possible that they would be surpassed by Ding Ping. They would be caught up to at the very least. Ling Han was obviously delighted at Ding Ping's improvements. With a smile, he said, "Third brother, there's a strong possibility that Ding Ping will catch up to you. Big brother is also in danger of being caught up to. Second brother is the most talented, so unless Ding Ping comes across some fated opportunity, he most likely won't be able to catch up." Murong Qing couldn't help but let out a wretched wail. As a senior, it was far too humiliating to be surpassed by a junior. He grabbed Ling Han's arm and said, "Fourth brother, you definitely have to give me some special treatment. If you don't, you'll never hear the end of it." Just thinking about being surpassed was terrifying. Everyone erupted in laughter upon hearing this. "Third uncle, sit tight and wait for me to surpass you." Ding Ping was still carrying a huge boulder that had been carved with divine patterns of gravity on his back. He had become addicted to carrying huge boulders, and he even carried one as he slept. The others all joked that he was a turtle transformed into a human. There was another person who had seen great improvements in their cultivation rock spirit. The rock spirit had seen almost no improvement in the past year or so, remaining at the Shattering Void tier. Once Ling Han returned, however, it naturally had rocks to eat again. After crunching on rocks for over 2 months, it transformed into a rock ball as if it had entered into hibernation. It didn't move for several days. However, it finally welcomed a period of explosive growth a few days ago, successfully advancing into the immortal level. Spirits of the 5 elements were different from demonic beasts. Demonic beasts could transform into human form after reaching the immortal level, whereas the rock spirit had always been in a humanoid form. It was just that its body was composed of stone. After advancing to the immortal level, however, the rock spirit finally became able to speak. Even so, the rock spirit didn't enjoy speaking. It remained the same as before, with its hobby being chewing on the leg of Ling Han's trousers and acting cute. This drew strong disdain from the Azura Demon Emperor. "You're not a bloody dog, so why are you trying to act like one?" "Woof woof." He nudged the rock spirit as he barked. "Why is this rock spirit always competing with me? I'm the dog here, okay?" Ling Han didn't only help the Rain Emperor and his other friends. Rather, he even distributed spiritual herbs to the guards in the palace, allowing their cultivation to improve significantly. It was just that they didn't have the right to enter the Black Tower and cultivate under the reincarnation tree. After all, the reincarnation tree only provided a limited number of spots. Right now, it was only able to support the cultivation of 10 people at a time. Even so, the guards in the palace saw great improvements. In the past, their cultivation level was generally at the flower blossom tier. Now, however, they were breaking through to the spiritual infant tier one after another. Moreover, all of this had happened within a short span of 3 months. This was extremely astonishing. Ling Han turned to his disciple and said, "Ding Ping, return home for a few days. We'll set off for the chaotic star's majestic empire in 1 month at most. Heavens knows when we'll be able to return again." In reality, Ding Ping didn't want to return home. To him, the Ding clan wasn't his home. It was merely a place where he had been born and where he had lived. However, he didn't dare go against his master's will. He packed his belongings and set off for home. The Ding Ping of now wasn't the same as the trash that he had been before. Rather, he was a personal disciple of the current emperor. Moreover, his own cultivation had also reached an impressive level. No one in the Ding clan knew that he was already at the Shattering Void tier. Anyhow, the spiritual infant tier was already a supreme level in the eyes of most people. Thus, he naturally received a warm welcome when he returned to the Ding clan. However, some people still gave him the cold shoulder, with others even showing hostility. This caused Ding Ping's heart to almost skip a beat. He was naturally aware of the hidden turbulences swirling through the government. There were some factions secretly scheming to usurp the Great Ling Empire's throne and become rulers themselves. Ding Ping detested such people with all of his heart. His master had succeeded in opening the sky, freeing everyone from the evil claws of the 5 sects as a result. This had saved them from the fate of being refined into an alchemical pill. Moreover, his master had even been taken away as a hostage because of this. And yet, these people were actually planning to repay this debt with betrayal. He hoped that such traitorous trash didn't exist in the Ding clan. If they did, he would personally kill them. An elder waved at him and said, "Hee, Ding Ping, come over here for a few words." This elder was called Ding Chong and was an influential member of the Ding clan. He had been at the flower blossom tier in the small world, and he had initially thought that he would remain stuck at this tier and eventually die of old age. In a pleasant turn of events, he had received a great deal of benefits after Ling Han opened the sky. As a result, he had been able to advance to the spiritual infant tier in these past 2 years. This extended his lifespan by another 200 years. He had already lost his ambitions before all of this occurred. However, the fact that he could now live for 200 more years reignited his lust for power. 7th great-grandfather. Under Ling Han's influence, Ding Ping was still relatively respectful to his elders, even though he didn't have any good impression of them. Ding Chong nodded, slightly flaunting his seniority. In his eyes, Ding Ping was still a junior of the Ding clan no matter how powerful he was. Thus, it was Ding Ping's obligation to act upon his wishes. He pointed to the seat in front of him and said, "Sit." His expression became serious once Ding Ping sat down, and he said, "Ping-er, it's been almost 2 years since His Majesty left, am I correct?" Ding Ping's heart jolted, yet his expression remained unchanged. Ling Han had taught him to remain calm and composed in all situations. He simply nodded and said, "Master has indeed been away for almost 2 years. Ping-er, there's a saying that a nation can't go a day without a ruler." Ding Chong chuckled as a startling glimmer burst to life in his aged eyes. It was lust for power, lust that made this elder seem like a giddy youth who had seen a beautiful woman for the first time. 7th great-grandfather, what are you trying to say? Ding Ping asked after a brief moment of hesitation. Ding Chong chuckled and said, "You're the only disciple of His Majesty, so shouldn't you ascend the throne now that His Majesty has left, perhaps never to return?" Shwa. Ding Ping instantly stood up and said, 7th great-grandfather, be careful with what you say. What kind of attitude is that? Ding Chong flared up with rage. Was this brat trying to revolt? He actually dared to speak to him in such a disrespectful manner? Seventh great-grandfather, you're drunk? Ding Ping waved his sleeves and was about to leave. Ding Chong slammed the table and roared, "Stop right there." Ding Ping ignored him and continued to walk forward. "Heh, young man, didn't you hear your elder telling you to stop?" A figure suddenly appeared before Ding Ping, blocking his path. "It's bad manners to disrespect your elders." Ding Ping trained his gaze on the person before him. He was a youth who was at most 24 or 25 years old. A sword was strapped to his back, and an astonishing sword intent radiated from his entire body. It was as if he were the sword, and the sword was him. "Who are you?" Ding Ping asked in a low voice. He could feel strong pressure from this youth, and it was clear that the cultivation level of this youth was no weaker than his. Shattering Void Tear. Chapter 1080, 5 Sects Reappear. Chapter 1080, 5 Sects Reappear. Me. A smile appeared on the youth's face, and he said, "I'm Zhang Imo. I used to have a nickname, the Small Sword Emperor. However, there's no way I can keep that nickname anymore. This is the immortal realm, and if I still dare to call myself the Small Sword Emperor, someone will eventually beat me to death." Heaven's Sword Sect, Ding Ping said in a low voice. He finally understood that the 5 sects were the ones behind the hidden turbulences swirling in the government. Are these people pigheads? They already knew that the 5 sects had wanted to refine them into a realm pill, yet right now, they were still listening to their encouragement. They were going to betray Ling Han. Were fame and power truly that attractive? Could it really cause one to become so stubborn? "Heh, what a coincidence," Zhang Imo said indifferently. "We had wanted to trick you into coming back, but who knew that you would come running back yourself?" Ding Ping's feeling of apprehension disappeared now that the true culprits had revealed themselves. He had already reached the 3rd layer of the Shattering Void Tier, and coupled with his devastating explosiveness, he could achieve a battle prowess of 12 stars. In addition, he could still draw on the power of the nation, and he furthermore possessed treasures that had been gifted to him by Ling Han. He wasn't afraid of anyone at the Shattering Void Tier. Ding Ping wore a composed expression and said, "I'll never betray my master. So what if you guys capture me?" "Ha ha ha ha. We only need a puppet." Ding Chong burst into laughter and continued, "You're Ling Han's disciple, so it's well within reason for you to ascend the throne." His face flushed red with excitement. He had never dreamed that a day would come when he could become the ruler of an empire. In fact, even his old buddy, which had shriveled long ago, became reinvigorated with life. He felt an urge to find some young woman to root. Sure enough, power was the strongest aphrodisiac for man. Retard. Zhang Imo casually waved his palm, instantly forming a sword light that decapitated Ding Chong. Pung! Blood sprayed through the air. Ding Chang's head rolled along the ground for a few seconds before coming to a stop. A look of shock and surprise was frozen on his face. He couldn't understand why Zhang Imo had suddenly attacked him. Weren't they allies? Weren't they going to rule the great Ling Empire together? Ding Ping didn't have a shred of sympathy for him. This person had betrayed Ling Han, and he had already been lenient by not personally killing him. He shook his head and said, "Seventh great-grandfather, you were making a deal with the devil. They merely wanted to use you guys to lure me back." A glimmer flashed across Ding Chang's eyes. Then, it disappeared forever. He could have enjoyed an extra 200 years of peaceful life, and because of his relationship with Ding Ping, he even had an opportunity to reach the deity transformation tier or heaven tier. This was the immortal realm, after all, so treasures at the mortal level were widely available. However, he had lusted after power, a power that far surpassed what he could wield. In the end, his dreams were shattered, and he paid for it with his life. "Are you going to surrender, or do I have to use force?" Zhang Imo asked calmly. He had always been a prodigy, and he had already reached the Shattering Void Tier prior to Ling Han opening the sky. Now that he had cultivated in the immortal realm for almost 2 years, his cultivation level had already shot up to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void Tier. his battle prowess soaring to 15 stars. This was thanks to the richness of the spiritual chi here, and also thanks to the fact that the 5 sects had quite some resources. This wasn't Zhang Mo's limit, though, and thus he didn't hurry to break through to the mountain river tier. Instead, he planned to accumulate his cultivation and attempt to reach the supreme battle prowess of 20 stars. 15 stars of the shattering void tier wasn't enough to satisfy him. Ding Ping roared with laughter and said, "We'll only know who's stronger than who after we do battle." Heh, our intel is wrong. Who would have thought that you'd reach the shattering void tier so quickly? Zhang Yimou smiled and continued, "This attribute is quite similar to your master's. The speed of your cultivation is truly troublesome. I genuinely want to kill you now lest you become a larger threat in the future." If they had been able to kill Ling Han, the lower realm would have still belonged to the small world. If that had been the case, the great elites from the 5 sects would have been able to refine another realm pill soon. As for them, they would have also been able to enter the immortal realm soon. They wouldn't have ascended to the joint peace planet, but instead to the ancestral grounds of the 5 sects. They couldn't receive an inkling of the immortal realm's resources while on the joint peace planet. Living here was like living in a barren land, and this left them feeling extremely suffocated. In fact, it even made them feel despair. Thus, after lying low for 2 years or so, they decided to launch a fatal strike and change the ruler of the Great Ling Empire. They would first use Ding Ping as a puppet emperor and then kick him off the throne in the future. There would eventually come a day when they would finally re-establish contact with the 5 sects in the immortal realm, which would allow them to return to their ancestral grounds. Ding Ping balled his hands into fists and said, "You can try if you want." He still had yet to battle against someone at an equivalent cultivation level after advancing to the shattering void tier. Although Ling Han had once suppressed his own cultivation level and fought against him, his freakish master was absolutely inhuman. He had been pummeled until despair was the only thing remaining in his mind. Zhang Yimou chuckled coldly as he raised his hand and said, "Heh, even your confidence is like that of your master. That makes me even more infuriated." Shwa, shwa, shwa. Several sword lights swept toward Ding Ping. Zhang Yimou was called the Small Sword Emperor, so it was only natural that he was supremely talented in the sword Dao. Sword intent radiated from his body with his each and every action. Ding Ping was unafraid. He let out a mighty roar as he threw his fists outward. Pung! A powerful force compressed the air, forming a shield before Ding Ping and obliterating the sword lights. An expression of astonishment finally appeared on Zhang Mo's face. The battle prowess of Ding Ping was a bit beyond his expectations. He's clearly only at the 3rd layer of the shattering void tier, so how can he be so powerful? I'm still weaker than my master, but suppressing you should pose no problem at all. Pa, pa, pa. Ding Ping cranked his neck, causing explosive crackles to sound from the joints in his body. Although he hadn't been able to learn the indestructible Heaven Scroll, he had been able to learn the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art, which allowed him to set foot on a path of dual cultivation. This was also the reason behind his being able to wield power at 9 stars of the Shattering Void tier, even though he was only at the 3rd layer of the Shattering Void tier. Moreover, his explosiveness could elevate his battle prowess to an even more terrifying level. Zhang Yimou seethed with rage. He came from the same generation as Ling Han, and there had even been a time when he had been able to suppress Ling Han. However, his opponent's disciple actually dared to say that suppressing him wouldn't be a problem. Fuck, he's far too arrogant. He drew his sword and said, "Young man, you're far too arrogant." "I'm not arrogant, I'm confident." Ding Ping was in high spirits and wouldn't be afraid no matter what opponent he came across. This was another quality that Ling Han had taught him. Of course, not being afraid and needlessly charging toward death were 2 completely different things. If he knew that he was no match for the opponent, he would do everything within his ability to retreat. Only by staying alive would he have any chance of turning the tables. How infuriating! Zhang Yimou humphed as he lashed out with his sword. He had nothing to worry about, and it didn't matter to him whether this was the Ding clan and whatnot. A brilliant sword ray that stretched for almost 300 meters instantly wreaked havoc and destruction. Head out to fight, Ding Ping roared. If they were still in the small world, they could naturally soar into the sky to fight. However, their only option right now was to head outside. Petty kindness. Zhang Yimou couldn't care less. In his eyes, the people here were still ants from the small world. Before, they would still be useful as ingredients of the realm pill. Now, however, they had even lost this tiny amount of usefulness. That being the case, he had absolutely nothing to worry about. Boom! Buildings were destroyed and people were killed as the devastating sword ray swept through the Ding clan. This was an overwhelming power. Damn you! Ding Ping roared. He unleashed his full battle prowess as he charged toward Zhang Yimou. He had to prevent him from indiscriminately massacring people. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.